Heyo Dragon Riders, this is a compilation video of all the not class series, or technically why every dragon are in X class and why some should not be. But to make it worthwhile watching all this again, I'm going to be going through and fixing some of my previous mistakes to the best I can. I practically rewrote and edited the entire Strike class video because it was so bad. And include every 9 realms dragon, as the series has now concluded. But I'm still not doing Rescue Riders, as that's confirmed to be a different universe, plus I don't really want to watch the show. So please bear with from any janky editing. Some of these videos are a couple of years old at this point, where I do not have the same equipment I do now, and even the same editing style. I also want to thank the people who worked on the How to Train Dragon Fandom wiki. I use this site to aid in my research, and it's been such a great and useful resource to help me make this series. Also, the series was inspired by Loxton and Noggin's Not Type series, hence the similar title, where he does the same thing but for all the Pokemon types. This should go without saying, welcome to the year 2025 on the internet, but this of course is my opinion. I obviously have no authority over any of this. I just like looking at these animals in interesting ways, and disagree slightly on maybe some of the class placement. Will it affect the actual franchise? No. So, if you disagree with me, please let me know in the comments. I like to hear your reasoning why you think dragons should be in different classes or actually remain the same. Just please be nice and respectful. This is just a bit of fun at the end of the day. That should be everything. Enjoy!
The Strike class dragon, known for their blazing speed, vice-like jaw strength, extreme intelligence, pinpoint accuracy, powerful attacks, explosive firepower, and unique abilities that allow them to navigate in their respective environment/atmosphere.
This is the class of the top predators. So if any dragon possesses extremely deadly abilities, they are most likely Strike class.
I'm looking at why these specific set of dragons belonged in the Strike class family, and why the ones that don't are not Strike class dragons.
And FYI, I'm going to be changing the category system for this video because it was bad. But the first category now is the Nightfury likes. These dragons all share the similarity of the Nightfury, in that being behaviour, abilities, and looks. But in order to know what's similar to a Nightfury, we first need to understand the species itself. Known as the unholy offspring of lightning and death itself. These dragons are very clearly Strike class, mainly because it's a dragon that mostly represents it. The blazing speed Toothless has buckets of. He's well known for being one of the fastest and speediest dragons out there, often outmaneuvering many dragons they see on their journey, utilising their iconic dive-bombing move to pounce on their prey. Or to strike first. Very little is known about the Nightfury species, as they've been hunted to near extinction via Grimmel, but because Toothless is the main dragon, he of course gets the most development, so there is still quite a lot to cover. But the one area we're unsure of is how wild Nightfuries exist. I theorise they're incredibly predatory dragons, using their black scales to camouflage within the night sky, and later the cloaking ability to sneak up on their prey. These type of speeds are only used in short bursts, as Grimmel noted in the third movie that the Nightfuries can't fly for long distances, meaning they have a sprint-like stamina, very similar to top predators. In addition to fairly decent tracking skills, though not as impressive as tracker class dragons, but Toothless has demonstrated multiple times to have great hearing, and a good sense of smell, often tracking down Hiccup whenever they're separated. They seem very adept with many types of environments. Toothless has fairly decent swimming speeds. After unlocking the splitting spines, his maneuverability in the air drastically increased. He has a form of echolocation with his Fire Blast, using the sound to navigate through dark caves. Their strength and close quarter combats are fairly decent. Seen to kick off Hookfang, a monstrous nightmare, which weighs 5,000 pounds. He's pinned down a triple strike, push away a whispering death. Coupled with their relatively sharp claws, they could do quite impressive damage. But that's not everything. Toothless uses other parts of the body, like his tail fins to slap enemies away, his wings to shield from dragon blasts. And with his intelligence, oh yes, his intelligence. Toothless is an extremely clever boy. The amount of times he outsmarts humans, the many other strategies from dragons. There's so many examples that it's hard to choose from just one. You've at least seen the movies. You've seen my clever boy in action. There's no need to go into specifics. Though what is interesting is Toothless's jaw strength. We don't know how powerful it is, but there has been cases where it could be stronger than we might think. He's left bite marks on his nemesis, he's held down dragons with just his mouth, which could lead to the potential idea of why the Nightfuries have retractable teeth. It's an odd adaptation, but perhaps it helps the teeth not get chipped. Who knows? I think I'll eventually do a video specifically on this adaptation feature because it's kind of bizarre but cool. But we haven't even mentioned the coolest part of this dragon.
Nightfury! Get down!
The Plasma Blast is some of the most explosive and dangerous firepower there is in the dragon world. If Toothless wants to, he could blow away towers, rocks, and giant alpha dragons in one go. But if he wants to do a warning shot, or do a light stun, he can as well. Because Hiccup and Toothless don't want to hurt the dragons, or the dragon hunters. It's a PG show, they can't just burn to a crisp. Despite being a missile, he pretty much hits his target all the time, even able to bounce shot off walls to surprise their targets. There's even the multiple blast variation. Though not as powerful, but launching a barrage of attacks, going up to their shot limit, could really overwhelm their opponent, and has been seen to use in creative ways. Let's not forget that it can concentrate this blast into a beam, used to intensify heat in a certain area, though this seems to be a very short-ranged attack. Or tool, technically. He uses it to curl up to go to sleep, it's adorable. In the stowaway, Toothless has also demonstrated a flame jacket-like ability, though I think this was just a niche one-off. Horror, I think that's how you pronounce it, has a strange talent or an ability to quote-unquote inflame the dragons. I don't know, it's kind of weird. It was just a one-off thing anyway, so there. And of course, Toothless has the alpha mode. He gets super hot, so much so he has to split his spines to vent the heat, and gains incredible firepower to fight the opposing alpha dragon. So in Dragons to Berk and Beyond, there is a possible theory that every dragon can get into this state to challenge the alpha, but I believe it requires an extreme circumstance, like Toothless caring way too much about Hiccup, and being so overwhelmed they had to get into this state to surpass their enemy. Because I think non-alpha species dragons tend to be naturally submissive, because Toothless didn't use this against the Red Death. Although there is the additional opponent of how the alpha works in the dragon culture, which I will have to explain in another video, because this is the King of Dragons alpha. It's a little bit weird. But in terms of personality, by the sounds of it, this dragon sounds extremely scary and terrifying, which is true, but also not. The very little glimpses we do hear about other Nightfuries has sounded to be quite scary. It was a Nightfury that took Drago's arm. There's a reason why Grimmel hunted that specific species to near extinction. Perhaps it was the most prominent dragon that was terrorizing his home. We know they were around there, as when Grimmel was Hiccup's age, instead of freeing the beast,
I killed it where it slipped.
And Toothless too was the individual that was most feared when it came to the dragon raids. But, of course, once you gain the animal's trust, they are the most loyal, puppy-like, cat-like, cute little things. Ah! They are adorable, they are friendly. I don't need to talk about Toothless' personality. You know it, you love it. We love Toothless. Next is the Lightfury. And I believe this is a subspecies of the Nightfury. There is quite a lot to this, so I'll have to explain all this reasoning in another video, but just for now, just trust me, bro. Though I should state there is significant evidence for this, this isn't just me pulling something out of thin air. And I also need to state this, there are other subspecies in the franchise, but usually I won't be covering them, because subspecies are usually so similar to their species counterpart that it becomes irrelevant to talk about. So in the future I won't really be going into them, unless there's a couple that have an interesting point to it. It'll come up when it comes up. But I am still going to cover the Lightfury as the role it has in the film and the fact that it's incredibly distinctive. So why is the Lightfury the Stryke class? Because it's the same species as the Nightfury and has pretty much the exact same abilities, but with maybe the most minor differences. We don't know about their splitting spines, and because they're white, their camouflaging would work differently. Because this variation predominantly stayed within the hidden world, perhaps the whiteness helps reflect the bright crystals in the area. They also have slightly less affinity with lightning. The Lightfury uses cloaking, it looks kind of standard, whereas the Nightfury has lightning charging in. Perhaps that's just due to the colour of their scales. Because Nightfuries are black, perhaps it needs even more light to reflect it off, because black is such a bad colour for reflection, whereas white is much better at that. There's also the moment in the camp scene where we could see her still cloaking, but it might have been a while after she used her firepower. Whereas any time Toothless has done it, it's been a relatively short distance. Even on the ship, she was still cloaked, so perhaps they can either remain in that state for a long time and choose to come out of it, or the activation is a little bit more similar to the Changewing and Dromelion. I don't know. Lightfuries tend to be a little bit more sociable, as they tend to hang out in pairs, and when Nightfury and the Lightfury got together, they kept to their sort of family group. Though it feels so bad to compare that to the Nightfury, because with the only example we have is Niffless. He was so lonely. But yeah, everything else is pretty much identical, and even if there are some other differences, it'll be so minute that it'll never ever change it out of being the Strike class. And of course, there are the Nightlights to talk about. They're sort of counted as their own separate thing, as they are the result of hybridization. But I don't know if you can still count them as the same species as the Furies. Probably. I'm still going to talk about them because distinctiveness, again. But they are still pretty much identical to the two we've talked about before. Though there are a couple of missing abilities from the Nightfury, and little expansion on new ones. Rough Runner, Dart and Pouncer have shown to have quite unique abilities, but this seems to be an individual case. In the games where we explore these dragons more, we've seen an addition to their moveset, which is interesting. For example, with Pouncer, his firepower is particularly bright, often known to blind enemies with a bright flash. Rough Runner has been shown to be more tanky out of his siblings, even having healing and buffing abilities. I think this could just be translated as he's just a lot tougher than the average Nightlight. With Dart being the most aggressive and bombastic out of the siblings, she has abilities akin to extra damage, inspiring, or sending out extra damage when coming into battle. I guess this could be translated to, I guess she does more damage, or she inspires those around her to take action or buff them. Then we have the future Nightlights, like Thunder, who over the generations and over 1,000 years has slightly adapted over time, having extra spines along the wings and tail, I guess to help with maneuverability. The iconic black and white feature still remains, but they have more connection with lightning abilities, with their breath attack moving away from a plasma blast to either electric shock or electric beam. Thunder also has like an EMP pulse, just sending out a giant wave of electricity, very useful in the modern settings. But he can still cloak like his ancestors. And likewise with his ancestors, everything else is pretty much identical, thus still Strike class. And now onto a dragon that's not directly related to the Nightfury, but is very Nightfury-like. But funny enough, this isn't the only one that exists, but it is the one that is Strike class. The Wolly Howl, or as I like to refer to it, the fluffy Nightfury. And the reason why they're fluffy is because they're very well adapted to the cold environment, having thick scales along their back, looking like fur from a distance, and typically a pale belly, which lets them blend in with the cold white clouds in the sky. These dragons love the cold, and more specifically blizzards, as it helps with their stealth, with having more than enough endurance and stamina to withstand the storms. So yeah, these dragons are well camouflaged, and the ones that don't typically look like their tundra counterparts tend to thrive in other environments like woods or rocky places, with the only exception of Frostfire, but that's definitely pointed out as an atypical thing. And of course, with their preferred environment, they have a firepower that fits well within it. Instead of a plasma blast, it's more of an ice blast, but still highly explosive, needs incredible accuracy to land, and contains bits of hail. With some stories of Wolly Howls using it as a bit of a prank, or perhaps they just like to bring their horrible weather because that's what they feel comfortable in. Thus, legends form around them. It is said that the Titanwing Wolly Howl's sharp new look is more than enough to strike fear into the bravest of Vikings. I think this is another case like the Nightfuries, as once you get to know them, they seem quite sweet and funny. As to finish the quote, don't let this look intimidate you, as this Strike class dragon is more than ready to join in on some snowball fights. There's more examples like Crumb Finder. If you drop a loaf of bread or cake, or other sweet treats, and turn around and find it gone, you may have been a victim of this gluttonous dragon. Or with Fuzzbucket, when the snow squalls are raging outside, there is no cozier place in the world to sleep than Fuzzbucket's lap. It's like a giant dog or a cat. Ignoring a bit that the reason why there is a storm is because of Fuzzbucket, which is such a sapphic behaviour. Well, as even with Wise Wind, this sensitive Wolly Howl is so in tune with its surroundings, it can predict bad storms, and is alert to even changes in Gothi's mood, which all of this in tandem works well with its intelligence, and that it is. This one's a little bit more of an assumption, but from the story you can easily tell. Though the known hybrid Crimson Howler has been described to frequently use its high intelligence and natural camouflage to evade attacks. And that dragon had to get its intelligence from somewhere, and I'm sorry, it won't be the big moose. So yeah, it's clear that these guys are Strike. They are the antithesis of just a Nightfury that loves to live in the cold environment. And now onto the next category, the other Strike class dragons. Look, these guys aren't Nightfury likes, but they still fit into the Strike class. Starting with another snowy, icy boy. The Snow Wraith. This guy is quite clearly Strike. It's another top predator in the wintry landscape, using their incredible speed in the snowstorm to pounce on prey, and using their superb senses to hunt. From the interactive map, it says it senses the fall of each snowflake. It hears glacial movements of every iceberg. It feels the slightest change in even the most frigid temperatures. Though if the target is covered in snow, it masks their scent, as well as their thermal vision, which is a great adaptation for a cold setting, so they'll be able to sense their targets from far away, and can get close very easily. They are very well camouflaged being white, and coupled with their burrowing ability, they could appear from almost anywhere, and the danger's not over. They're also incredibly smart dragons, hunting in packs, formulated strategies. There's even an individual called Fleet Sleet, who can understand rudimentary communications with Vikings, and they purposely mask themselves in blizzards, which works well with their strength and stamina. There's another dragon that can easily withstand the storms, and has been seen to take a couple of hits from dragons, and they're also quite adept at close quarters combat, with having a relatively high jaw strength, thrashing around their victims, and with a very high possibility that it could take someone out in one go. Especially with their firepower. It's kind of like a mixture of Nightfury and Wolly Howls. It's still an incredibly explosive ice blast, but this version is less haily, I guess more fiery? Oh no, it's just a perfect blend of the two. So it's incredibly deadly and requires a lot of accuracy to land, which unfortunately the Snow Wraiths may be lacking because despite their thermal vision, their normal vision is a little bit weaker. And just like the Nightfury, they can concentrate this blast into one singular attack. So these dragons are incredibly feared throughout the archipelago. There's even a group, or somewhat subspecies, of the Snow Wraiths who have migrated further south. Although their thermal vision is diminished in warmer climates, their serrated teeth still send chills down the spines of their prey. I also like this one with Skrill Chiller. The Vikings have heard tales of the dragon from far north, a snow wraith that rides the winter winds and will fight rampaging Skrills to the last of its chilled breath. This dragon is so cool. And for the most part, the attitude matches, tending to be more aggressive and elusive compared to other dragons. But like many other Strike classes, we do get very rare glimpses of them being a little bit more softer. Like with Glazier, liking to help decorate Burke over Snoggletog, or with Frostfang, famously known to be more friendly and ebullient compared to its Snow Wraith counterparts, particularly round Snoggletog. I love the fact that these dragons seem to like Snoggletog. Or with Fern Tom, where all they want in life is just to have a nice little slush bath. How cute. There's nothing much more to add, though I am curious about the weird spiky things on their tongue.
What's with that?
I don't know. But it's still a very obvious Strike class dragon. And now another fan favourite. The Skrill. This dragon is one of the most feared throughout the archipelago, and there's many legends about their power and furiosity. Berserkers of the past even used the power of this dragon to try and conquer more lands. So these dragons are quite clearly top predators, and we even have evidence of this time, as they are known to prey upon Singetails. Their power primarily comes from their fire, or should I say lightning, as this dragon uses its metallic spines along its back to redirect lightning towards its foe, and they can even store this lightning for further use. However, this does drastically reduce their shot limit, hence why they like to hang out in lightning storms, as they can recharge pretty much instantly. And this firepower has a surprising amount of versatility to it. Of course, it could be traditionally fired to cause a lot of damage. It's being used to deflect other fire powers, even incredibly strong ones like Toothless's Plasma Blast. They can even close their wings together to create electric force field for protection. There's also in this moment a triple cross, where there's just a wave of electricity coming out from the Skrill. Perhaps all the stored energy this dragon holds can be unleashed in one go. And of course, just like traditional Strike class dragons, they are incredibly fast. In combination with their firepower, they can ride lightning bolts, as if it's like a flash of speed. But even without that, they easily kept up with Toothless, and they even navigated and maneuvered through tight spaces. So yeah, this dragon is incredibly deadly. And just like others of its class, this dragon too is well camouflaged, tending to be dark colours, but most iconically a deep purple, which blends right into the dark clouds. And they're extremely intelligent as well. We've seen Skrills devise strategies, stopped itself from being trapped in the iceberg again, remembering what Hiccup did before. They seem to understand forgiveness or regret, as soon as Hiccup lets it go, he didn't attack him.
That is one smart dragon.
I hate smart dragons, which is why I love you.
However, there are some weaknesses or quirks with this dragon. When placed in water, it can't absorb and redirect lightning, Their close quarter combat seems a little bit less effective compared to some strike class dragons, as they tend to just fly up and use their lightning power, meaning their endurance is possibly not that high, seemingly to prefer dodging and weaving any incoming attacks, and seems to be attracted to metal, find it fairly fascinating. But I have to ask, does it have that sweeter side like many other strike class dragons? There is a couple of examples. Like Revenger, it tries to maintain an intimidating presence, in which her species is renowned, but she does have a soft spot. In feeding time, she looks out for the smaller and younger dragons, and makes sure they get their fair share of fish. There's Slager? I don't know how you pronounce that, but he's pulled young Vikings behind him to create a massive sleigh for Snoggletog. Joltalon loves being pet, and even make your hair stand up on end. And Moonshock, a tender-hearted Skrill, searching for fellow dragons as romantic as she is. So once again, almost to a T, everything is identical to typical strike class dragons. But let's broaden our horizons a little bit, to some of the strike class dragons that are a little bit less traditional. The Triple Strike. This dragon is an extremely successful species. There are even fossil records of this dragon, and it hasn't changed one bit, which complements what is said about them. Triple Strikes remain much as they always were, unscathed by time. They are masters at devising new ways to meet their needs. Evolutionarily wise, if they fit super well in their respective niche, the core doesn't really change all that much, like sharks. They haven't really changed since they became a thing, and that was even before the trees. So the Triple Strike is quite adapted to many different types of environments. One of the primary reasons is because it's a top predator, one extremely well versed at combat. Having giant pincers as forelimbs, this dragon can grasp things, or very precisely snip something up. They can ram into opponents using their nasal horn, and of course, they have their quite iconic feature, the rattling sound of the 3 stingers. Each one contains different types of venom. The first one numbs its opponent, the second causes hallucinogenic effects, while the third is the most agonizing, causing painful convulsions, feeling like the victim's blood is boiling. I definitely don't want to be on the receiving end of those stings, thank you very much. But even without the stingers themselves, the tails are extremely versatile. They can coil up and smack enemies really far, or launch them individually. They're strong, able to grasp opponents, keeping them contained, or it could be used to grab objects and lift heavy things. The rattle seems to be some form of communication, especially between others of the same species. As to train the dragon, it seems to respond quite well to that sound. Additionally, these dragons have armor plating, which really helps them take quite a few hits. Despite Sluther getting almost knocked out at the end, he did withstand quite a few blasts from the Nightfury, and there's plenty of evidence within the franchise of their combat prowess. As continuing on talking about Sluther, when we first met the dragon, it was in a dragon fighting ring, and was deemed as the champion. There's an individual called Eclipser, who was specifically bred to dominate moonlit dragon fights. They were also very well camouflaged, being black and white, blending perfectly well into the night. Which brings me on to their other adaptations for being a top predator. Though the main Triple Strikes we see is sort of a brown beige colour, which doesn't typically blend in, there are quite a few examples that do. Like the common and slender Triple Strikes are green, Smothering Slusher likes to spend its winter curled up in the snow, and being whitish colour blends right in. Thorntail likes to hide among the spring flowers biding her time. And even without some of the camouflage, these dragons are fairly stealthy, with Sluther being able to sneak up on some of the dragon riders in the show. They're also pretty good swimmers, and coupled with them being extremely fast and maneuverable in the sky, these dragons can take on almost any type of landscape, as one of the primary features of being a strike class dragon is to be extremely agile. We've seen the Triple Strike do a bunch of flips, easily tucking and rolling, performing somersaults, dive bombs, flying upside down. It's quite funny seeing how many times they can expertly maneuver themselves. Of course, being a strike class dragons, they are very intelligent. Like with Sluther, he's shown subtle smartness throughout the series, especially helping to devise strategies. One of the most prominent things with this dragon that isn't too similar to other strike class dragons is their firepower. It's just a generic orange stream, or could be fired in short bursts. It's not particularly known for its power and explosiveness. Though there is the champion Triple Strike, who seems to be able to spray acid from the tails, managing to fire the venom from its stingers, I presume. But none of this is typical strike class. But that's okay, as it easily makes up for it in many other areas, such as the infamy these strike class dragons get. Combined with their potent poisons with their aggressive nature and high intelligence, you will soon understand the fear that most Vikings hold for the Triple Strike. like an individual called Stone Mother that has a legend so terrifying that when most Vikings mention her name is enough to trigger a deep-seated primordial fear. There's one called Deathstalker, with even an appearance from this dragon in any patch of land is so daunting that local Vikings will be willing to abandon their homes and sheep flocks to avoid the dreaded sting of this territorial dragon. There's even a dragon that has caused philosophical debates between Vikings because it is that terrifying. However, pretty much for every instance of these terrifying legendary dragons, they're actually sweethearts, especially if you get to know them. Like with the aforementioned Stone Mother, she's actually quite affectionate to people she has formed bonds with. Soft-hearted by nature, she quickly becomes a generous and faithful companion to anyone who could see through her reputation. Or even the one that causes so much philosophical debates. The sad thing about all these positions is that the Emperor Pandinus is actually a sweetheart once you get to know him. He is completely innocent to the bulk of his crimes attributed to him, and those that he is guilty of, most of them have pretty strong justifications. And there's extra individuals, like Stringacker, who uses his egg-like appendages and clatter them like a rattlesnake. He's very popular at festivals and with Viking musicians, or even with Rosethorn. Unlike most triple strikes, she has a very docile nature, and would never dare to use her stingers. So for the most part, I believe the triple strike fit into this class. It doesn't fit every single characteristic of a strike class dragon, but as it does fit the majority of them, I still think it belongs within the class, as I think it's a little bit unfair to boil down all these magnificent creatures with so many variety and abilities into 7 confined traits. As you've seen from earlier, different class dragons still exhibit similar features from other classes. This holds true to the next dragon we're going to talk about, the Deathgripper. Yeah, I once put this dragon in the not section, as to be fair, it does have a lot of similarities to other classes, but honestly, re-looking at these set of dragons, I realised Deathgrippers are obviously Strike. They are very notorious for hunting other dragons, known to lurk in the shadowy enclaves, for unsuspecting prey to wander into their range. This dragon is greatly feared, as both dragons and Vikings are common victims of this beast. In Bork's Dragon Manual, most dragons are labelled with extremely dangerous, kill on sight, but not the Deathgripper. In its place is the enigmatic, immediately fatal, avoid at all costs. So, why are these dragons extremely dangerous? Well, they are supreme predators. Deathgrippers can smell blood up to 20 miles by flicking their forked tongues in the air. When the Dragon Riders did the invasion at Raven Point, the Deathgrippers very quickly heard their presence. They have giant four-limb pincers, perfectly designed to hold their victims in place. Meter-long tusks protruding from their mouths, seemingly designed to lift plates in other dragons' armor, allowing them to inject their poison with the stinger. The stinger has said to have multiple effects. Some can be used as mind controlling, as Grimm will use the effects of Deathgripper venom against themselves, so they could be ordered around by him, but it can also cause paralysis and agonizing pain from their toxins. They can even inject the corpse with more of their venom, so if any other dragon comes along to touch it, they would also be paralyzed. This also proves that they are incredibly smart dragons, devising many strategies for their victims and laying out plenty of traps, working in packs like hunting dogs, and mostly being dark-coloured works with their stealth. And even if they're not typically dark, they are perfectly efficient at stalking their prey in the shadows. Deathgripper use the sound of the winds to cover up their movements, as they then drop from above. We can also see this in effect in the movie, where Volker and Cloudjumper got snuck up on. Of course, being a strike class dragon, they are incredibly fast. They're not the most acrobatic, but they're fairly maneuverable. And even on land, they can climb up a lot of surfaces and quickly run around. And with their own body armor, they themselves are fairly tough and can take quite a beating. And they can also be fairly strong, seen to use their tail as a whip, and with their scythe-like thing, they're obviously designed to be able to pin down their prey, and we've seen some as large as Plowhorn, or even on the rare occasions they could sever limbs. The only thing they haven't really got going for them is their firepower, although still incredibly deadly, but it's not typical strike class. It's an acid blast, when in contact with oxygen is ignited on fire. Incredibly destructive as it goes through stone, wood, metal. The acid type firepower has been seen throughout many classes, so it does lean more classless. So yeah, you definitely want to avoid this dragon. Even some dragons of their own species avoid them. Executi likes to draw male Deathgrippers in as their chosen mate and end up on the menu. Miasmic Deathgrippers are very much known to be cannibals, as they eat their own young for their own sustenance. And there's an individual called Fenrir's Eviscereaper, who prefers the flavour of food that is terrified. To this end, the Eviscereaper will keep her prey alive as long as possible, dismembering the woeful quarry piece by piece, before finally putting her meal out of its misery. PG franchise, everybody! Yay! Pretty much every descriptor we have of any Deathgrippers is always telling how feared they are, how dangerous they are, how they like to kill their prey. It's quite stomach churning. Deathgrippers are venomous, violent, and vile dragons. Perhaps a real Birkin trainer can bring out their softer side, but for now, avoid at all costs. And were those Birkin trainers successful? Well, perhaps not Birkins, but there has been a couple examples of people bringing out this slightly softer side, though it is quite rare and incredibly niche. Back in the time of Bork the Bold, Thordis, second name, managed to tame a Deathgripper, Saferal, by discovering him injured, but managing to nurse him back to health, and they managed to link bonds of friendship and became inseparable, possibly because of their sort of similar attitudes, as she went back to her hometown to wreak revenge on the man who was responsible for her lover's death. I can imagine a Deathgripper sort of relating to that vibe pretty well. And there is this one other example with the dreadful version of Glaive Driver. To cut a very long story short, Eric's old Dragon Trappers team disbanded. One of the members had a child. One time when he was 2 years old, the child managed to get out and was missing for days, then appeared again randomly back at the house. And he only replied with, "Bodhi took care of me." A few months later on a hunting expedition, they came across the Glaive Driver, and they were about to fight until this child interrupted them and said, "Bodhi!" and embraced the dragon, which is incredibly sweet, but we don't get much more than that. They just hugged. How they became friends and what the specifics were, we have no idea. But Glaive Driver was the one to bring the sun back. But that is literally it, in terms of them being slightly nice. There are such interesting lore tidbits and stuff like that, which I can't do in these videos because we're just looking at why these dragons are strike class. But that is definitely on the tables for when I go into individual of these species. For now, why is the Deathgripper strike class? It's because they have every other ability of being a top predator, incredibly dangerous, feared, fast and maneuverable, deadly, though with a stinger which can be synonymous with the shark class dragon, especially with this and the triple strike both having poison or venom to inject, which is a characteristic specifically pointed out for shark class dragons. And giant pincers as well, because they're sharp. If there was a dual class system, both Triple Strike and Deathgripper being sharp and Strike, I think would totally make sense, but we can only have one in this scenario, so I think Strike slightly wins out the edge. And finally, onto the not Strike class dragons. Honestly, this is just the one dragon that we barely know about. And also, I'm just going to use the original clip from the video, so have fun with that.
The last dragon, which is definitely not a strike class dragon, is the Songwing. Its main appearance is on Hiccup's map and on Fishleg's cards in How to Train Dragon 2. Resembling a body of a fireworm, small and stocky with two small hind legs, wings with patterns like a Deathsong, and proportions similar to a Timberjack. The fire type is relatively unknown. In one concept image, it is a stream of fire, like pretty much any other dragon, but not one like a strike class. Not much is known about these dragons, but all the Vikings know is that they are very dangerous and is known to kill everything. Which sounds awfully like another dragon we know. Yes, this isn't the only similarity to the Deathsong. Its main ability is a hypnotic song to lure in prey. And to be honest, my headcanon that this is actually the Deathsong, and when Vikings were discovering it for the first time, they mixed it up with other dragons as the culprit of the song.
To be fair, there was even a reference in the show whilst they were trying to name the Deathsong.
Songwing!
What?
That's what we should name it.
But for now, although I treat this dragon as the Deathsong, it is still categorized as a strike class dragon. But it would be best suited as a mystery like its reimagined version. The Tracker Claw, the only one without an animated intro. It used to be Fear Class, so I'm just going to use that. But just pretend there's a Rumblehorn and a Tracker title. Natural Born Hunters. Tracker Class dragons have a highly acute sense of smell and taste that enables them to effortlessly track down and find anything.
Is that it?
Not the best descriptor, but this is basically the class of dragons who can hunt down things very well, or good prey dragons, using their senses to get an advantage over predators, and they tend to lean more on strong and tough, but not as much as the Boulder class.
And I'll be looking at why these specific set of dragons fit into this category, and why some are not Tracker Class dragon. The first category is, yes, these are definitely tracking dragons, with high senses, predominantly a superb sense of smell, detecting scents from miles away, so good. Starting with a good baseline, the Rumblehorn. From the discovery of this dragon, it defined a whole new class. Rumblehorns can fire explosive missiles from long distances. They are very strong with thick armor plating protecting them from most threats. Using their horns and surprising speed, they can charge any enemies like a rhinoceros. However, these aren't the reasons why this dragon is a tracker. But it sets a trend that these dragons tend to be more strong and resilient. The reasons, of course, is its amazing sense of smell. In How to Train Dragon 2, Hiccup drops his helmet in the water,
And despite the object remaining there for a very long time,
Skullcrusher is still able to pick up the smell and track it all the way to the home of the great Bewilderbeast.
where Hiccup was hanging out.
They can use this to find prey and smell when someone is coming, making them very hard to sneak up on. In Race to the Edge, the episode Crushing It shows Skullcrusher detecting a disaster. There was an oncoming tsunami that was about to hit the edge. I think the Rumblehorn smelt a change in the ocean and using its vast intelligence, identified it was a tsunami.
And warned all wildlife and dragons on the island, with later the humans, but they didn't quite pick up on it.
Oh look, it's Peppy, my favourite pet yak!
It was a Rumblehorn that discovered Astrid and Hiccup in the hidden world, probably smelling them and thought they were intruding.
So with superior sense to most dragons and the ability to feel pending disasters, Rumblehorns are the most fitting of the tracker class. Next is the Thunderclaw. Despite its really cool name, it's fairly dopey.
Their stampeding can be seen as cattle-like, herding together in big groups for protection.
Thunderclaws shoot their either green or orange streams and fireballs, and they are quite strong, and others pulling some of Drago's war machine.
They are known to be easy targets in the dragon hunting world.
They are pretty plain, docile, herding dragons with no outlandish abilities, so it would be hard to categorise them into any other class, but having that sense of smell firmly places it in the tracker. Yep, they have an acute sense of smell, allowing them to locate items easily. They do this like lizards and snakes, sticking their forked tongues out in the air, tasting the chemical, leading them to the direction of the source. Lizards and snakes have a special organ called Jacobson's organ, located in the roof of their mouths. They stick their tongues out, collecting the chemicals from the air, then the Jacobson's organ sends a signal to their brains, telling them pooey stinky that smells, or yum yum cookie. And I imagine that this dragon has the same or very similar organ to this.
There's a couple of individuals which we could draw reference to, like Rumpus, who is said to be one of Berg's best searchers, or Ovandil, who was named after an ancient North star because of its legendary tracking skills. So yeah, a very clear tracker class dragon. This Snifflehunch is quite similar, being much more friendly than any other dragon, probably because it has the ability to sniff out whether a dragon is a friend or a foe, probably sensing the different hormone levels within their bodies.
Perhaps it could smell the serotonin and dopamine and know that the dragon is friendly, but if they can smell adrenaline or cortisol, they know the dragon is hostile.
They're also used in Berg's early warning systems, as they can smell invading Vikings or incoming storms and wild dragons. There's even an individual that hunts down baby dragons that escape from their pens, just to put them back safely.
The trend of being resilient doesn't really apply to this dragon.
It's been seen to hold Volker before, presumably able to fly typical distances like many other dragons, but as this is another background dragon, this is another example of a prey dragon that likes to stay within big dragon groups and follow leaders, especially as their firepower isn't the most impressive thing in the world.
Fire sneezing.
There is a possible subspecies where instead of fire, it's an icy blast, which now me saying this out loud, it's just more of an interesting tidbit, more than help explaining why it's in the tracker class.
Lastly in this category is the Windgnasher. Like the Snifflehunch, it only has the tracking ability, so like before it only suits the tracker class. But let's dive in deeper. This is another dragon that could carry heavy things without signs of struggle, and is another fairly resilient one. Some Windgnashers have extremely thick hides, enabling them to take on a lot of physical punishment.
The Windgnashers have an icy blast, with a champion variation, having like a massive icy breath akin to a blizzard. Speaking of, they seem to thrive in those sort of environments. It seems like they can almost survive in any location.
Another dragon which is friendly? Funny, if a dragon can smell the mood of the stranger, they tend to be friendlier. Huh. But like before, where they shine is the organ at the end of their face. It is said that they can detect scent anywhere in the barbaric archipelago and beyond. A Windgnasher's sense of smell is so well defined that they can smell a single daisy from 100 miles away. Wow! Put that in perspective, bears can smell 2,100 times better than humans and can follow their nose up to 20 miles away. 40 miles for polar bears, but there's nothing much blocking smells because it has a pretty desolate habitat. And that's rotting carcasses which reek a lot. Not particularly scentless daisies. Let's give it the benefit of doubt. I imagine Windgnashers can reach this feat when they are soaring in the air with little blocking the smells. So let's use the polar bear statistic. That means Windgnashers have 5,250 times better smelling than humans and 2.5 times better than bears, which is one of the best smelling animal on the planet.
To balance this out, there are some known individuals who have poor hearing, like the arcane Curling Biter, who apparently has no ears but can still hear, but not very well. We're unsure if this is just a this dragon thing or one that affects the entire species, but they easily make it up from their superb smelling, which the method is extremely similar to the Thunderclaws, letting their tongues out to flap in the wing to taste the air.
Apparently from the flavour they could tell information about other nearby dragons and even food that they are eating.
Next out the sniffing lot is a dragon from the 9 realms, the Snifflehide. These dragons are considered blind or have incredibly bad vision, so to make up for it, they have an acute sense of smell. It's possible they have great hearing as well, but it's hard to fully confirm this, as we only see this animal in one episode and moment in Season 8. The Snifflehide have pretty good manoeuvrability in the air, and average strength for a dragon, easily holding people and distracting Jormungandr by holding onto its face. A cool detail is in their colour and patterns, helping them blend in with their environment. Snifflehides are herbivorous dragons, which is an incredibly rare thing in the dragon world, and that's kind of it really. The only other thing is their personality. We have only seen one individual, but it's possible the species as a whole is quite nurturing. Even after the Snifflehide finds Eugene's true scent, she accepts him and looks to be loyal as she returns in the final. Oh, the scent thing it's a whole thing. The body spray that Eugene uses smelled like her eggs, so she thought he was one of her babies, but then after it was cool. I guess that shows intelligence, even if they are easily tricked using their senses. But because this dragon does appear to have quite strong senses, it's quite clear why it's in the tracker class. Here's another dragon with more of a unique tracking ability, the Glasscaster. But in order to explain this, I need to go over its firepower. It's a generic plume of fire, with hints of purple in it. However, when mixed in with the sand in its environment, it creates glass structures, so either capture or directly hurt their opponent. Wow, a really interesting firepower, especially one that interacts with the dragon's environment and habitat. And this firepower also supports his tracking skills. This isn't a sniffing boy, it's a hearing boy. It can pick up subtle vibrations from the glass structures around its home by screaming out, echolocating the threat. Similar to how bats send out sound waves that bounce off objects, interpreting the signals to quote-unquote see their surroundings. This is particularly used in dark environments, where seeing can be challenging, which works well for the Glasscaster, as they live in the desert realm, full of black sand and dingy skies. So these guys are quite obviously tracker. But what else do they have that fits into this classification? They do possess high intelligence. Having glass structures around its home shows forethinking and strategy. Despite a lack of wings, they are fast runners, and because of their size, they are durable and strong, resisting multiple attacks and pinning down enemy dragons to engage them. Their behaviour, however, is more on the Stoker side, being more territorial and aggressive, but to be honest, it doesn't really matter much. Everything else sounds like tracker. I shouldn't be making terrible puns in this video.
The next category is half sniff boys and half, wait a minute, you're another class. This is the territory where I wasn't 100% sure whether or not to put them in the not tracker section, as they have the boringness abilities of one said tracker and has some extra little bits that fit into another class. So this is like a half not category.
Honestly, if a dual class system was fully implemented, these dragons would be the prime example of that.
The deadly Nadder is a good example. The Nadders were initially a part of the Shark class, but had changed in How to Train Dragon 2. Their firepower is neutral in terms of class disparity, It's not like other tracker class, but it isn't really like shark class either. The only one which is similar is the Razor Whips, with the hottest fire of all dragon species. Oh gosh! Snotlout, why are you riding Stormfly? The fire is known as Magnesium Blast. It's so hot, combined with Grunkel's Lava Blast, Nadders could break through dragon-proof chains.
The Stonefly even developed a concentrated version of this blast, storing it up to create even more power and heat. Being white in colour, it shows even more similarities to the Razor Whips.
Right, so what makes this dragon sharp then? The spine shot? Nadders can fire venomous spikes used to immobilise prey with extreme accuracy. Huh, that's almost identical to the description of the shark class. Most of these dragons can fire extremely sharp and poisonous projectiles from their bodies, which can quickly be regenerated. Come to think of it, the Nadder was originally the poster child for the shark class, and literally matches every description, vain and prideful. Yup.
Watch out, babe, I'll take care of this.
Sharp body parts, owie, adore stroking and made to fuss off, Gucci Gucci Goo! But there are considerable similarities to tracker dragons. Its strength is higher than you would expect from this type of dragon, being able to lift a 5,000 pound monstrous nightmare. Their stamina is high, being able to fly long distances. It also has a nasal horn like many others in this class, and of course, the deadly Nadders have a superb sense of smell, which is the reason why it changed class in the first place. Baby Nadders can smell a human from 100 feet away, which is around 30 meters, but apparently it's unknown if it increases as they mature.
But we've seen Stormfly track Hiccup and Toothless all the way out into Itchy Armpit, which is practically on the other side of the archipelago. She also tracked down Toothless all the way in the Hidden World. Been many encounters where Stormfly tends to be the first one to react to a dragon because she can sense them approaching.
So yeah, the deadly Nadder, half sharp, half tracker.
And this definitely easily highlights the flaws of the class system, especially confining it to just one, despite a couple of examples. But yeah, it's very split down the middle.
Just like the name of this next dragon, the Common Rockstomper.
Or in School of Dragons, the Mold Ruffle, having a similar body type to Nadders.
Focusing on speed and agility, proficiently hunting. Their firepower consists of shooting huge, powerful fireballs, with a signature ability gathering fire on the edges of their wings and tail, strengthening the blaze by fanning the fire travelling at great speeds. They have a nasty habit on setting themselves on fire. Wait a minute, that's Stoker class. To be fair, in School of Dragons they are classed as Stoker, but in the Rise of Bug they are classed as Tracker. The Mold Ruffle first appeared in School of Dragons. At a later date this dragon was added to Dragon's Rise of Berg as an individual named Mold Ruffle, and the dragon species being named the Common Rockstomper. So, which one is more canon? This isn't really the correct question to ask. What abilities does the dragon have that suit more with the specific class? So, we've looked at the Stoker side. Why is this dragon a tracker then?
Well, there's been several examples of them having good tracking skills, either helping other fellow dragon riders or hunting down their prey. We're not too sure specifically how they track stuff down. There's quite a few references to their really good eyesight, but it's quite possible they can smell things as well. I personally quite like seeing dragons with other types of tracking skills, highlighting different senses that can help in situations. In addition, their behaviour is, I guess, more tracker-like. They seem fairly friendly and neutral, but in some cases they could be a little bit more aggressive. But it's also stated a couple of times that they like hiding treasure or digging up treasure. I guess they find enjoyment in discovering things. Squirrels burying and uncovering acorns come to mind, though that is primarily for food and storage, whereas for the Rockstomper, it could just be a fun hobby. They do have this interesting communication method, using their horns to make a unique ringing noise.
They are wonderfully curious. With intelligent, cat-like nature with keen hunting sense, they are precise, cutting through strong winds to get to their target. This is another case of which side takes precedent, the Stoker or the Tracker.
But honestly, I'll go more with the Tracker on this, as the dragon is more expanded upon in Rise of Berg. But you know, dual classing would fix this issue. I said this before. It's going to be the same for the next one. The Gembraker. The dragon ridden by D'Angelo. I put them here because this dragon does have impressive tracking abilities, used as the group's main tracking dragon, using their incredible sense of smell. Like when Thunder went missing in Follow the Lightning Part 1, the dragon riders follow Plowhorn, who eventually tracked them down. They are strong, knowing to smash through their surroundings, they're tough, withstanding many hits. They're surprisingly fast if they charge at you, as well as having impressive intelligence. They've been seen to coordinate strategies against the new riders in the chase. But the thing is, I can also see this dragon easily be labelled as bolder. Personally, I think more so, but it still does fit into Tracker. This dragon has a rock-like appendage on their face, a giant crystal-like horn, used to ram opponents for massive damage, or smash the gems in its environment to eat. Yes, this dragon also likes to eat gems, which is a very boulder thing to do, if not a definitive characteristic. And currently, this dragon has at least 2 of the 1 requirements for it to be in boulder. Well, what about its firepower? Thankfully, this is less class specific. A flaming loogie bomb, a gooey greeny blast that does look lava based. It could function similar to the Grunkles, with the gems that it eats fueling the fire, but it isn't confirmed anywhere. But other than that, they tend to be quite aggressive as well, charging at anyone who gets within their territory. But this behaviour isn't boulder nor tracker-like, really. Though what is more boulder-like is that once they are loyal to their trainer, they are extremely playful and lovable. So this dragon is just such a split between boulder class and tracker class, and this is another example of a dragon that should have a dual class. But for now, I guess the tracker aspect outmatched the boulder-like ones apparently. Thus, it's tracker class. But wait, in Dragon's Rise of Berg, they are boulder class. So at this point there's 2 contradictory media saying that this dragon is 2 different classes. Great! Oh no, I've explained it. You can pick which one you want it to be.
These dragons are definitely not tracker class, with very little to no significant tracking abilities, but are more suited to other classes.
I just want to note this for the Submaripper. Pretty much in all media they are classified as just tidal, from the post of the class cheat sheet, to the interactive map, to in games like Rise of Berg. But on the Dragonpedia, it does state that the Submaripper is both tracker and tidal. But I'm going to have to trust the wiki on that, as the page wasn't archived in the Wayback Machine. So at this point it is quite debatable whether or not this dragon is part tracker class. But for the sake of the argument, I'm just going to pretend that it is, but I still don't think it should. For reasons when I cover the tidal class segment, because I want to reduce repetitiveness in this video.
The last one today is, funny enough, another dragon that should also be in the tidal class. The Mudraker has special sense receptors that react to vibrations. But where does it use these sense receptors? Deep underwater. Mudrakers use sound waves for echolocation, locating and tracking down objects underwater. I have to admit, echolocation is more of a reason to be a tracking dragon,
But the context it's used for is for hunting and escaping predators in the water. They're often referred to be living in swamps, or often found in bodies of water, even known to splash in the waves for fun. At the very least, they do prefer the cold, and can last underwater for hours. Looking at their build, they're quite aquatic-like, having a massive sail on their back and being quite thick and stocky, which, sure, typical of a tracker class dragon, but also can work very well for tidal class. Even their firepower interacts with their habitat.
The Mudraker produces sonic blasts that travel at intense speeds through the water, causing powerful waves.
Now, in Rise of Berg, their firepower is referred to as fireballs and not sonic blasts, which sure is atypical for a tidal class dragon. But because these are both games and share contradicting information, honestly I'm just going to pretend that they have both, using the different types of firepower for different purposes. Though even the fire has some resemblance to water, I guess. They're often mistaken for steam vents in swamps, so perhaps they use it to keep themselves warm whilst underwater? Meh. But there's literally nothing else referring to what should be amazing tracking skills. This just seems like standard adaptations for life in the water. Apparently they may have slightly thicker hides. There is this one individual that could grow hair, which is odd because this dragon does not look hairy in the slightest. And their behaviour can be a mix between relaxed or playful dragons, which is once again either tidal or tracker. This is probably another obvious example of a dragon that should be given dual class. I've said this many times before, but I think in this instance the tidal just outdoes the tracker part. Honestly, it's just all the relationship with its tracking abilities is within the water. You know, like the Skuldron has electroreceptors to help them hunt for prey, and they're just tidal class dragons in the water. Yeah, I love this class system so much. And lastly, a new dragon from the 9 realms, the Vinetails. I like what they're designed on, more ape or monkey-like dragons, with their flying to be like the Draco lizard, expanding their patagyme to create wings to glide. This could be an example of how the 4 or more legged dragons gain the ability to fly. Or not, these animals are incredibly bizarre evolutionarily, which is why they are not real. But I put the Vinetails in the not section because they have no reason to be tracker. This is an example of a dragon that doesn't really fit into any other classes, to be honest. They haven't got any sharp body parts, no fire to be seen, and aren't all that mysterious. Though as much as I don't like to, for the reasons I would explain when I go over the mystery class, I would argue for them to be in that class. Now, they aren't mysterious. Their abilities are quite understandable, especially in a more modern context in which the series takes place, but for their incredibly unique physicality and way of life, which the mystery class can highlight. These guys, like I said before, are partially based on monkeys. Thus, they do pretty much whatever a monkey could do: climb, barter, hang out with their homies, grab things with their tails, and eat bananas. Well, a non-descriptive fruit in this case. But yeah, these guys are intelligent, with a pack of them outsmarting the Dragon Club in a chase for their book and tablet. They are highly social, living in large groups, and they can even formulate strategies. One example is when they trick the Dragon Club into the dragon-eating flowers so the Vinetails can cross over to the tree. Also, they've chained up in a tug-of-war-like situation, pulling the book from Plowhorn's mouth and the dragons out of the dragon-eating flower vines, showing surprisingly impressive strength as well. But yeah, dragon monkeys, monkey dragons, monkey, but not Tracker.
What a bunch of tricky jerks! Who manipulates people for food?
The Mystery Class. Little is known about these dragons due to their stealthy and sneaky nature. Dragons in this class are generally more feared than those in others. It includes the most diverse and interesting range of dragons, most of which exhibit extremely rare and unique traits. A little bit vague. But this class is really cool. It's full of dragons with really awesome abilities and the coolest concepts that I would love to explore further. So yes, the Mystery Class. I'll be looking at why these specific set of dragons fit into this category and why some are not Mystery Class dragons. The first categories are the Welders. Dragons that collect objects and either weld them together or attach it to themselves. The most prime example of this is the Armorwing. They find pieces of metal and attach it to their body, as they are scaleless underneath. This adds levels of protection, including being fire resistant.
They're able to hold on to the metal by their magnetic body, which is why Snotlout struggled to pull the axe off even before it was welded on. And having a magnetic body for a very niche purpose is quite a mysterious thing and unique for a dragon.
In a pinch, the dragon sets alight their metal and fling it at their enemy. A risky strategy, revealing their vulnerable skin. I think it's used as a last resort. One last powerful hit to remove the threat or make the dragon flee. But also it could make itself lighter so it can fly faster. So how does this dragon weld the metal onto itself? Their blinding firepower, of course. Some similarities to the deadly Nadder. The dragon produces an intensely hot flames, often blinding opponents if stared at, and it tends to emit sparks. All of this dragon's behaviours and abilities are centred around the collecting and the application of metal to its body, which I guess is the unexplained part. It's evolved in a unique way to cover its weakness. But that magnetic field is quite interesting because everything does produce an electromagnetic field, but only at a microscopic or atomic level. Somehow this creature has advanced it. The dragon is aloof, along with not being a very common one as well. Thus rumours and legends form about this dragon, becoming a blacksmith's worst nightmare. In a similar breath, and most likely closely related, is the Bonekapper. Inspired by hermit crabs finding mollusk shells as a home to protect themselves, Bonekappers collect bones and attaches it to itself as armour, covering its thin, soft scales. This action in itself is quite a mystery. We know why, but how? The bones seemingly just stick to the creature, therefore allowing it to do some abilities, like roaring. The dragon is known to search for years for specific bone pieces. There are individuals that prefer some other materials like lava or ice in conjunction to bones. I think it would be cool to see a bit more of them and find out how that works. Perhaps their saliva hardens and acts like a strong adhesive. Unlike the Armorwing, the firepower doesn't support the main mystery, but perhaps a thundering roar makes up for the fear factor this dragon was missing. The roar is infamous with tall tales of it deafening people and melting the flesh off their bones. A surprising factor though is the dragon is really sneaky, almost silent flight, until it lands behind Glover. A real world comparison would be like bats, as they are silent flyers themselves, Because of the light bones and blood circulation through the wings. Don't ask me how that actually works. Perhaps the Bonenappers have something similar. So with its silent flight enabling it to sneak up on enemies, a thundering roar that terrifies the hardest Vikings, and a weird quirk of collecting bones makes it a great dragon fitting for the Mystery class. The Smothering Smokebreath. As its name suggests, this dragon can secrete smoke from its skin and firepower, supporting its stealthy nature. They are the same colour as the smoke to act like camouflage, as the pack rely on it to steal metal for their nests. Like the Armorwing, this species uses its firepower to weld metal together to make the metal nests. The fire is so hot, it can melt down the metal in a matter of moments. If we base most of the metal off of iron, that means the firepower is 1538 degrees Celsius, or 2800 degrees Fahrenheit. Although small, they use safety in numbers, hunting as a pack behind walls of smoke to intimidate its prey, making them unsure how large that animal really is. Flying fast so the enemy can't even keep up as well. As you can tell, the Smothering Smokebreath use smoke a lot. It's almost in every activity they participate in. So it begs the question, how do they even produce the smoke? Well, it's something that Vikings don't know, and that's why that bloody Smothering Smokebreath. Lastly, in this category is the Sword Stealer. What a great name. The Sword Stealer is almost identical to the Armorwing in terms of abilities, but turned up to 11. The dragon has metallic skin which attracts other metal objects, using their orange firepower to melt it right down to make it a part of its body, adding layers of metal. What I find fascinating is that the different Sword Stealers have different metal on them depending on the flame colour. But again, it's one of those situations where I go into far more detail and the science behind it when I do a video on this dragon. For now, the different coloured flames could play a part into the mystery of these dragons. They spend their time looking for more metal, sniffing veins and stealing from armories. But I imagine a giant metal bird can't be so quiet. In fact, how do they even fly? One, two, three, four? That dragon's got multiple heads! Which is what this category is about. These used to belong in Fear class, but now it's a complete mystery on why they have lots of noggins. I believe they aren't really mystery dragons, but they don't really fit into any other class, so I guess it has nowhere else to go. Zipplebacks are interesting. Along with two heads are two separate firepowers, gas and spark. This is a unique fire type, complementing the multiple heads, even though their personalities don't always mix. They combine their fire attacks in a flaming Ouroboreas formation, or used as a signal flare. Truly creative and versatile. But their firepower isn't really too mysterious. One fires green vaporous gas, and the other lights it with a quick spark. From the gas fired, introduces a stealth option to sneak up towards their enemies. Zipplebacks are solitary hunters using the gas as smokescreen to ambush their prey. They are fairly nimble flies and strong. Using their powerful necks and thick skulls makes them formidable close range weapons. But you know the saying, two heads are better than one? It may not look like it for Barth and Belch, but Zipplebacks are quite intelligent. Two heads used to problem solve, or complete multiple actions at once. Like one head sleeping and the other one looking out for danger. The two heads themselves aren't mysterious. Animals in the wild have a chance to get polycephaly. It's a birth defect where the twin embryos don't quite split whilst developing, and usually the animal dies early, not passing down that genetic mutation, as in most cases it is more harmful than good. Either require more nutrients to support both systems, or extra difficulty in escaping predators, or foraging for food. But for whatever reasons, earlier ancestors of the Zipplebacks gained the genetic mutation and passed it down, as it apparently seems to support the survival of this animal. Over time, the two heads complemented their skill set with behavioural survival tactics to firepower that only they could create alone.
Oh, wrong head.
But do you know what's worse than two heads? 4 is the Venus flytrap of dragons, the Snaptrapper. This creature has elements of this category and the next, but we'll see what that is later on. These are stealthy hunters, using their camouflage to hunt prey, hiding amongst vegetation, disguised as plants. The mystery is how they lure their victims, secreting a tantalizing sweet aroma of chocolate. This stimulates the hunger of dragons and humans nearby, luring them to their trap. But in self-defense, they can release the most unpleasant scent to ward off large Titan-winged dragons.
The luring using the sweet scent is based on carnivorous plants, which sends out an aroma to attract insects and other animals to fall into their traps. There are plenty of examples of animals using smell to ward off their predators.
Skunks have glands by their butts that use a sulfur chemical compound, so why can't Snaptrappers do something similar? I mean, they can send out a mist made of methane, same gas spewing abilities as the Zipplebacks.
Though methane is odorless.
They just don't really have a way to light it. Oh, and it's invisible and awful for the environment. Not only that, they spit metal melting acid and have one of the most powerful venom of all dragons, only being defeated by the Threadtail and the Slitherwing. With all of this, the four heads and the jaw splitting, no wonder the Vikings would be very fearful of this dragon. And the smell of chocolate. This dragon was once in fear class with the Zippleback, but now the scariest dragons are in the mystery. But I guess it's mysterious in how they produce those odours, or exist with 4 bloody heads. The next category is luring dragons, ones that hide and wait and pounce on their prey using a variety of unexplained ways. Like I said, the Snaptrapper already fits into this category, but we've just explained it, so we'll move on to the Deathsong. Hearing that sweet melody cements your doom. Because of their size, they aren't very stealthy, and having no armour leaves them very vulnerable to attacks. So they lie in wait, singing their tune, similar to its distant Jurassic ancestor. Wait, dragons are an offshoot of dinosaurs? The Deathsong possesses extracervical vertebrae, which, when expanded into their frills, allow it to project its call to specific targets up to 1 mile away. I mean, that's just specific targets, so the siren is a part of their hunting strategy, and it's a complete mystery in how it hypnotises dragons into a certain spot. This ability of course doesn't work on dragons who are deaf
Or hard of hearing.
Thus, the weakness of this allure, if the song can't be heard, then the creature can't be hypnotised and lured in. Deathsongs not only use their melody as hunting, but also as a form of communication. This has some inspiration from birds and whale songs, as I believe some dolphins and whales have their own unique sounds to communicate with each other. I'll go a bit more into depth with it when I make my own video of it. But for now, this isn't the only bizarre thing about this dragon. It can fire amber. I wouldn't even know where to begin with the logistics of this, but all we know, it hardens on impact. You can use flames to weaken it, methods like smearing monstrous nightmare gel on it, or having it on a sword. Oh, and the mighty jaw of this creature. So this whole animal is a bit of a which is fitting on the mystery class. Now earlier I pointed out this dragon was very stealthy, but that's because I believe not all dragons need to hit all the specific check marks, just more so the majority of them, and this dragon definitely fits the air of mystery and uniqueness which comes with the mystery class. So, a very unique mystery, right? Well, there's an exact clone called the Slithersong. There are minute differences that I believe class this dragon as a close relative, but nonetheless, due to very similar traits, this also would fall under the mystery. This dragon can lure you in with its enchanting melody, then immobilise you with its furious strike. The Slithersong shoots its opponent with an amber attack that will harden and leave them unable to move. So they're exactly the same in abilities and hunting strategies, which has given the Deathsong a slot on the mystery class. So of course it will do the same with the Slithersong. The only differences I can find are the colorizations of the pattern, being mainly blue and black stripes, and physical features like smaller proportional wings, meaning they flap faster, a wider lower jaw, thinner legs, smaller frills, and the spikes on the back are bigger. I think they're trying to compensate for something. In the games, the Slithersong's movement patterns are slightly different from the Deathsong. So, very unique.
In Rise of Berg, the Deathsong is still considered a Slithersong, but I don't like that. In Race to the Edge we see multiple Deathsongs, and they are both considered that species, and having two very closely related animals who are extremely similar to each other can still exist. Plus it's kinda cool having a couple of dragon species that have like obvious close relatives.
onto something more unique and the poster child of the mystery class, the chameleon-like dragon, the Changewing. From its namesake, it's clear that it can camouflage, which to a Viking could be mysterious. But at this point, a few dragons have this ability, and even a couple outside the class, so perhaps not. They camouflage by changing the colour and texture of their scales to their surroundings, very similar to real-life animals like chameleons and cuttlefish. They do this to escape, but also sneak up on their prey. Being a dragon that can go invisible to the eye perfectly matches the stealth and fear section of this class. A Changewing's acid can melt almost anything. Rock, wood, dragon-proof chains, and metal. Is a viscous, corrosive liquid spewing from the mouth. This comes from the common tropes of reptiles in cartoons spitting this type of acid. I don't know why very few reptiles spit venom, let alone thick, corrosive one. But that's not all in their arsenal of mystery. Changewings have a very unsettling ability to hypnotize humans and dragons, luring their prey, transmitting commands which the sole victim must follow unless snapped out of the trance. It's completely unknown how they do this. Visually, they dilute their pupils into slits and let them speak. But other than that, it's a complete mystery. Class dragon. How sweet. Wait, is that a naked mole rat? No, it's the sweet death. It takes a lot to resist the temptation of the sweet death. That's from their tree-like tongues sending out a sweet aroma, leading their prey closer to get snapped up in their jaws. This is somewhat quite a common hunting technique in the animal kingdom. Snapping turtles use their tongue to look like small fish, so slightly larger fish will go, free snack, then snap. The sweet death also has an acid blast like the Changewing, thick corrosive acid with a sweet scent. The dragon likes burrowing, which makes sense with its small eyes and earthworm-like body. It mostly does this for stealth, hiding away, making more and more Vikings fearful of that odd sweet smell. So with two abilities pretty much identical to the other two mystery class dragons, it's safe to assume it belongs in this class too.
The next category are the spiders. 2 more spiders were added in the 9 realms, and all of them would technically fit in the mystery class because of their creepy nature and unusual abilities. So apologies to those who have arachnophobia.
The Silk Spanner from the Dragonvine comic is very creepy, but honestly anything a spider could do, this dragon could do better. Climbing vertical walls and rocks, weaving webs in order to glide across the islands, or even use the web to float on the water's surface. But the big mystery is this firepower, or how it makes silk to fire. But anyway, this dragon has a very unique ability compared to other dragons, and a way of travelling using it. No other dragons in the original series has the ability, and thus a mystery class dragon.
Next in this category are the aptly named spider wings from the 9 realms. These dragons also produce flammable webs, solidifying instantly to ensnare victims, protect their nests, or trap enemies. However, these, I guess, dragons look much more like spiders, and nothing like dragons. They have wings, bug-like eyes, and 2 protruding spikes from their face, and a spiky mace tail to boot. But I guess that works more for their creepy nature, fitting into the mystery class. The dragons themselves are small and easily knocked out when attacked, so they rely on their strong webs to protect them, with the only way known to destroy them is to use a combination of firepower from many dragons. And just like spiders, they can cling to any surface to crawl along. One even pinned down on June's head and wouldn't let go no matter how hard the Dragon Club tried. I guess their stealth is great as well, just due to their size and relatively quiet cool. It did manage to pounce on June's head in the first place without them noticing until it was too late. In addition, they are pack animals, cooperating in large social groups to take down much larger prey. But from just their creepy nature, and I guess technically of their unusual firepower, they belong in the mystery. Oh, and the fact that we don't know much about them either. Like, this is it. They were only in the 1 episode. Having little facts about them also works in their favour. Yes, little creepy spider guys with no information. I wouldn't want to know more information about them. I'd kill it. Kill it with fire. And last of the spiders is Eugene's dragon pal, Wedmaster, the Deadly Spinner. This dragon is an odd-looking fellow, with 10 total limbs, 2 wings, 6 legs, and 2 arms, a deadly Nadder head, and, you guessed it, another flammable web attack. This guy's mystery because I guess it's creepy, spider-like, but extremely goofy looking. But let's focus in on its ability, shall we? These dragons too can wall climb, easily clinging to any surface with ease, which helps in stealth as it could approach its target from any direction. They seem to be fairly intelligent as well, quickly understanding Eugene's command, and was trained in record time, as they had to catch up to the others in the Dragon Club. Deadly Spinners are quite strong as well, easily holding humans up in its arms, especially holding others in its web attack. However, this variation is slightly different than the previous ones, as it has a little more versatility. It can still ensnare a target, making it borderline impossible to get out of, but it is easier to break externally. One shot from Thunder's blast freed Eugene. It can be more elastic, often being used as ropes and nets to carry large objects, and it could be sturdy as well, as the firepower was used to plug up the hole from the Crystal Realm into the Fire Realm. They possess a great deal of accuracy with their shot, and a relatively high shot limit for a Mystery Class Dragon. It is said to be 4, but I've seen times in the show where they surpass that. Additionally, their speed is quite impressive. Yeah, despite their multiple limbs, which could drag them down, they're quite manoeuvrable in the air. Webmaster was able to outfly a pack of flamethrowers, and keep up with other known fast dragons. He's also displayed impressive flying skills, like backflips and dive bombs. And lastly, their personality isn't like those of other mystery classes, being extremely friendly and docile, wanting to befriend humans and dragons alike. However, we've only seen one individual in Webmaster, but I like the confliction within the essence of the dragon, which makes it stand out, having a creepy, unattractive exterior, but a super friendly personality. Once more, they are quite loyal, and they can be a little bit mysterious and prankstery, with Webmaster often going along with Eugene's hijinks. So yeah, they are an odd dragon, which does fit into the mystery class.
The next category is unique/unexplained ability. These dragons have a single trait that are completely baffling, but may have one or two other abilities similar to previous dragons. For instance, the Dromelion. A Titan wing of this dragon can camouflage like the Changewing, using it to sneak up on enemies and fleeing if need be, so having the same level of stealth and fear factor. I don't know why the normal ones don't, but okay. These creatures are known as parrots of the dragon kind, being able to mimic any dragon fire types they come across, which is like, what? Each dragon biology supports its own firepower, like the Gronkles with the 2 stomachs, yet the Dromelion can just copy that? And just by seeing it once? This is completely baffling, and to be honest, this just chalks up to cartoon logic. It gives the dragon its class, but do you know what makes them scary though? The fact they are intelligent. They can mimic any firepower and combine them. A pack of them learned how to break through dragonproof chains by watching them. With additional pack behaviour comes new strategies these dragons adopt. If it wasn't for the mimicking firepower, this Dromelion could have been Strike. Well, does it have a speed of one? Next is the Flightmare. Ghost-like in appearance, the legend says the Flightmare is so terrifying, it actually freezes their prey in their tracks, which isn't too far-fetched from reality. One of the very unique aspects of the dragon is its firepower, a toxic mist that temporarily paralyzes the victim. It can be fired in a blast or in streams depending on the dragon's tactics. A deadly strategy, fitting of a species once belonging in the Fear class. The Vikings don't know why the mist paralyzes, perhaps it's due to the algae it eats, but there are many more unexplained and unique parts of this creature. The body glows as the algae it eats makes it do that. Very weird substance. Giving me similar vibes to deep sea fish using bright light to lure in their prey, but the Flightmare seems to know how to manipulate it, as after consuming some, it can glow even brighter, to the point of nearly blinding anyone that's looking at it. Its speed and agility is nothing to scoff at either, even being durable and withstanding onslaughts of dragons. Lastly, the Banshee-like scream. Honestly, it doesn't really add too much to the mystery, but makes the dragon quite terrifying, with abilities unable to be explained by the common Viking, and heavy fear around the beast, and targeting almost anything that moves, proves why this dragon belongs here. Going from petrifying to pickle bogies? Oh, sorry. Prickle Boggles. We haven't seen much of this dragon, but what we do know is very interesting. The dragon fires an ice blast, sparkly mist-like ice similar to that of a Flightmare, but the blast could do damage like normal firepower or heal the target. Yes, this dragon has healing properties, curing ailments of wounds with a soothing ice. I imagine that's been inspired by giving ice packs after being hurt. It's also a defensive dragon, giving resistance to most attacks. Wow. This dragon would be a perfect tank for a D&D party. Oh my god, a D&D has stray dragon. But yeah, how does it heal? But the Vikings don't know, and I don't either, so hence why it's in the mystery class. Ooh, a Cavern Crasher. This is a weird flightless dragon with strange abilities. The main mystery is around the flammable mucus it secretes from its body, similar to that of a monstrous nightmare gel. It can launch its substance and light it up with its green fireball, very interesting colour. It could also use its mucus, coupled with a collapsible skeleton to squeeze through any tight gaps in the rocks. Very unique adaptation for its environment. And like the Silk Spanner, it too can scale walls. At first glance, due to the similarities with the nightmare gel and its own substance, you could argue the case of Stoker class, but the weakness of this mucus is more fire, which evaporates the fluid instead of increasing the flame like the gel. I believe they serve different enough roles to warrant the different class. Plus the rarity of the dragon, burrowing, and speed for high stealth in dark caves where its natural habitat is, accumulate it to be a mystery class dragon. The newest out of the legacy dragons in this list is the Tormentipede. It's so new, I started writing about this video before it was revealed in the interview. As a result of it being a little bit hinted at in the unreleased comic, we don't know too many details, and some stuff could change if they actually ever make the comic.
Hashtag release fire tides.
So we're going to work off what we know. The author Richard Hamilton is 100% sure it fits into the mystery class, and I'm inclined to agree through one gimmick we know it has, attaching itself to the host as an appendage, somehow feeding off the host's emotions, causing it to behave like them. And that's all the info we really have from it. Other than that, we know it looks similar to a centipede, and that it breathes fire, getting stronger with more oxygen, which is how normal fire works anyway. I guess the lack of knowledge about the dragon favours it for being a mystery. And going off in a slight tangent for my own thoughts, it is somewhat small, only as big as an arm, so I can see it being very sneaky as well, and fit into tiny gaps. It being like a centipede is very creepy and very unnerving, which all feeds into the characteristics of a mystery class dragon. Last in this category is the Great Foreverwing, an alpha dragon. Straight away, this dragon has spec'd a lot into stealth, as despite its massive size, a tribe of people has settled on it. Without them even knowing, its skin is wood or earth-like in texture, with foliage thriving on its back. But some of the unique aspects of this dragon is its telepathy, as it tries to communicate to Hiccup. Means and motivation remain a complete mystery. It produces a common compound with sedative effects, leaving the target to sleep for long periods at a time. I'm not too sure if this is truly canon, as this is a Titan's Uprising only feature, but it can manipulate plants. I personally like the idea that it can do that ability, but it is up to you. I would mention the Alpha command, but it's a shared ability across all Alpha dragons, and many classes as a result. The only thing left to mention is the firepower. Nothing too special to write home about, but the Forever spews copious amount of lava, and again a Titan's Uprising only one, ejecting acid similar to those we've mentioned before. But apparently because it's a lot weaker than the village destroying lava, they tend to prefer the latter. It's up to you whether or not the Titan's Uprising exclusive abilities are canon or not, but even without them, the dragon fits into the mystery class alone with its camouflage, and some other mysterious ways.
And now, a new category just for some of the new 9-realm dragons, the Legends. These dragons are based on gods, legendary tales, mythical creatures, or have an innate connection to the dragon culture, which I guess is mysterious for humans. These dragons don't have much going for them in terms of mystery, but having a mythological status around them feels appropriate for the mystery class dragon. For example, the Gem Blaster. Based on the mythical Needhog dragon who gnaws on the roots of the world tree, as I believe it's meant to maintain it. I don't know, I need to do more research in Norse mythology. Anyway, this dragon has an interesting relationship for the dragon culture, using its blue flame to oxygenate the core dragonite, which in tandem sends it out through the whole hidden world through the roots of the crystals. Haha, pun, wow. We've seen fire start a chemical reaction where the crystal gives off oxygen and heat, but for this scale, perhaps the Gem Blaster's firepower is incredibly powerful. But other than that, unfortunately we don't know much about this dragon, and what we do know, it kind of seems like a standard dragon outside the legend and culture. They are fairly big with like whispery stuff on them, and with them having giant crystals on their body, which admittedly is quite boulder-like, and they are also fairly strong and tough, willing to fight and able to withstand Jormungandr's attacks for a bit. But the Gem Blaster understands its role in the ecosystem, and will rely on other dragon species to help it in its important task, which I guess shows fairly intelligence, but we don't know more about their species. Like, this caretaking of the Dragonzite could be a very individualistic thing, or there could be multiple around the hidden world taking care of crystals. We don't know. We've only seen the one. And I guess what else sort of helps in their mystery aspect is they are kind of similar to the Forever Wing. I think in their concept art they were originally supposed to be called Forever Crystal, so there is an obvious nod to that species. And they work in a similar way, sort of hibernating for decades and just chilling. Which makes me think that these dragons could also technically be an alpha species. I say, I wish we got more. But yeah, for now we're just going to have to go on with its most prominent aspect of this dragon, and the fact that it plays a very important role in the dragon world, with mythology stemming from it, thus making it a mystery. As a slight different end of the spectrum is the Yeti Wing, with the former having mythology and legends formed around its role in the world. This one is based on the Yetis in the Himalayan folklore. June did say that this perhaps could have inspired the Yeti myths. Great. And because this dragon has some resemblance of myths and legends connecting them, I guess this is where they belong. But I will be honest, I would have preferred if this dragon was put into a different class, like Tracker, as it does exhibit a lot of traits within them, but annoyingly they are missing some of the most defining characteristics to shift them, so there's nothing really I can do. As if I have any say over where these dragons actually go. Let's look at them further. The Yeti Wings are very strong and tough, withstanding many dragon attacks, smashing into a cave wall to cause the caving, with surprising versatility in climbing, which, as I say, this does sound more like Boulder or Tracker, but it is missing some rock-like features and any actual tracking abilities. The dragon did follow Feathers and Webmaster for a bit, but it was close enough where I could just sort of watch them. The only thing I could really point out is they do have large nostrils. It looks like they have a good sniffer, but again, there isn't actual evidence of this. Their firepower is also kind of neutral, with it being a powerful ice blast, able to freeze enemies in place by their feet, or knock them out straight from the sky. I guess the only mystery class thing they really have going for them is their sort of stealthy nature, using their natural white scales as camouflage, with a very unique feature of having fur. So while on a technical standpoint that is something strange for a dragon, it's not that impressive. These dragons do also seem to be fairly intelligent, formulated strategies to prevent the Dragon Club from escaping, and because they are on the larger side, they get out of breath quickly, as it's been seen leaping from rock to rock, hiding behind them, and then sneaking up to launch attacks, which is kind of mystery class-like, you know? Stealthy, but it's kind of funny because, that's just me being rude actually. No, just because he's big doesn't mean he can't be stealthy. So I guess he stays here, along with the Yeti myths. Long ago, near the collapse of the Viking Age, a terrifying, world-eating serpent in the hidden 9 worlds of the dragons was on a relentless rampage, threatening to destroy the lands, killing any of those trying to stop it. This event has become known as Ragnarok, until one day, an unlikely hero and his Nightfury banished the beast to the Dark Realm and locked it away for good. Centuries passed, the cage rusted, ignorance grew, and a new generation of heroes were stopping a villain from unleashing the Death Dragon upon the worlds. Unfortunately, they failed, and the feared creature of legend, known as Jormungandr, was unleashed. Once more is likely to be an alpha species dragon, however we don't have much confirmation of this, as it doesn't lead a group of dragons or anything, but its size, strength and attitude are very much similar to those in this status. Though it seems to unable to penetrate through rocks initially, it can smash through already existing tunnels. It did this to go through the different realms. Their jaw strength is massive, grabbing and dragging a fellow alpha species dragon, using its split jaws as extra grip and power. It also has fins and a tail, which can be used to whip or smack opponents, with strength to easily tussle with larger foes. Their endurance is also pretty up there, going on a killing spree with little rest and quickly recovering from a high velocity impact from thunder, one that knocked its own fang out. However, it's still susceptible to sharp weaponry on dragons, as it got wounded by Buzzsaw's Timberjack. This dragon is also a fast slitherer, quickly cutting off thunder and quickly catching up to many dragon species. Honestly, with its speed and deadliness, even considered the top predator of all dragons, this species could have easily been deemed as Strike class, but what keeps it out is its inability to fly. Yeah, despite all of this deadliness this dragon possesses, it's easily outdone by a skill that many dragons are capable of: flight. However, I'm pulling your leg a little bit. It can and will cover its own weaknesses, because it's a smart dragon, instinctively knowing how to counter any dragon species they come across, forming strategies to destroy the realms, and actually outsmart the Dragon Club a couple of times, by not initially falling into the trap with the Speed Stinger Venom, ignoring Volker's staff, and attacking the King's realm where the Nightlights are, leaving the God's realm unprotected. There's probably more, but we haven't got to the most lethal part of this dragon: its firepower. It does possess a generic fire breath, which at this scale could scorch the surrounding environment, but dragons are fireproof on the outside, so to be lethally efficient, it expels poisonous gas, causing the environment to perish, and victims who inhale the gas to pass away, thus giving this dragon its dreadful reputation. The firepower, I would say, leans more towards mystery. Despite venom and poison and gaseous firepower has been seen by many dragons from many different classes, the combination and deadliness has not been seen, making it horrifyingly unique. If the Fear class still existed, this dragon would definitely be leading the charge, which is one of the reasons why this is in the mystery class, and with its aggressive nature and apocalyptic goal, it gives this dragon an infamous mythology surrounding it. After a great deal of trial and error, the new heroes summoned the passed down power of the King of Dragons to subdue its wrath, once more locking the dragon away for more centuries to come.
The next class is the miscellaneous, the not quite not category, as these dragons don't fit into any other class. So I guess the mystery would do, as it's kind of the dumb stuff any dragon's not fitting in. So the first example is the Slitherwing. There isn't anything really mysterious about this dragon. The main attributes it has is the poison secreted from its body, and the venom it injects into their prey or spit, showing many similarities to poisonous frogs and cobras in real life. This is very potent. Even a skin-to-skin transmission gets into the victim's bloodstream, and can kill a Viking or dragon within the same day. Symptoms of the poisoning include green patches on the skin, pale discoloration, fatigue, and increasing pain. I don't want to be within a mile of this thing. This is one species that I wouldn't mind the dragon hunters making extinct. In combination with its incredible stealth like a snake and speed, it makes it a very fearful dragon to come in contact with. I like the colorization as well, confusing their victims with bright colors, but it also serves as a warning too, like many poisonous species in the real world. Again, not too mysterious, but very fearful. This is a strong candidate for bringing back the Fear class, but for now it remains a mystery.
The Hobgoblin would also belong in this category, but I'm going to talk about it more in the Stoker class segment. But just note, I do also think this dragon belongs in the mystery class. And now onto the Featherhide. Once more, this is another one with not really mysterious abilities. They can fully cloak to camouflage, which is common in this class, and it does definitely help with their stealth and sneaking around, which we've seen feathers do, along with their superb climbing skills and surprisingly good swimming, which helps them easily navigate throughout their environment. Their firepower is on the classless side, being a sonic sound attack, which we've seen all over the place. But in combination with their mimicking sounds, like making the microwave ping noise, it can be used to trick opponents, or just do some light-hearted pranks.
Our microwave appears to be malfunctioning.
I know there's some birds out there with incredibly mimicking sounds, which I think this is based on. And within the dragon world, it's quite unique. We've never really seen anything like this in other dragons. What else? Feathers appears to be quite intelligent, and with good agility and speed in the air, often keeping up with some of the fastest dragons. They could be on the slightly weaker side, as they prefer to run and hide from danger than fully engage. The closest we see them in combat is with a bunch of other Featherhides, but in that, they get knocked over fairly easily. Though their strength is pretty good, holding multiple people and even heavy objects with the help of other dragons. So honestly, Featherhides aren't really all that mysterious, but they don't have any abilities akin to other classes, and the ones they do have do lean more towards mystery, as it does help with their stealthy and pranky nature. But before we move on, they do have one really weird and honestly fairly mysterious thing about them. When a group of Featherhides go into molt, they become very zombie-like, aggressively attacking other dragons, grouping up and swaying and turning their camouflage on and off in time to some cult thing. But once out of shed, they go back to their normal selves, sort of peaceful, sweet dragons. So yeah, here's the miscellaneous section of this video for the mystery class.
The last example is the Bufferlord. the most cow-like out of all the dragons. In all honesty, reading the description of all the abilities, I'm struggling to place this dragon in any class. It's so plain. The eruptive firepower is indicative of a Stoker class, creating plumes of fire clouds, reaching far and high powered, but it needs more to go into that class, like setting itself ablaze, so why not sharp? It has spines it shoots, but is not precise nor have any toxins to supplement it to confirm its class placement. And the spine shot is connected to its inflation. It doubles its body size by, I'm assuming, sucking in air around it, similar to that of a pufferfish, although they just suck in water. Well, although a unique ability, it's not quite mysterious. Perhaps because it's very unusual, so then I guess mystery. Wait, there's no stealth or speed to speak of? And any fear factor is gone by just sitting there in the middle of the field grazing on grass. It's a cow with wings! With pufferfish DNA. It has strength, durability, body armor, and horns comparable with that of a boulder or tracker class dragon. But again, we're missing a couple of key features. They're eating rocks, they're smelling abilities? Maybe yeah, something like that. It's not a tidal because it doesn't go swimming. That's it, it's clearly a Stryke, as it doesn't really fit in anywhere else, so I guess the mystery works. Personally, I like to put the Bufflord into a tracker class and study to see if it has better senses. It has large nostrils and able to track down the island its unique food is on, but as it's unevidenced, it stays where it is. Here are the dragons that should belong into another class, either abilities, habitats, or general aesthetic that matches the description of more of others. This is why these dragons are not mystery class. The Sandbuster Dragon is a very interesting specimen. It kinda has the weirdness and the vibes of a mystery, but its abilities scream boulder class. Let me explain. First, the firepower shoots out heated sand that can bounce off of a surface, which then solidifies into glass on impact. Think of it as Minecraft cooking your sand to make glass in a furnace. That's this dragon. So how does it get the sand to shoot? By ingesting it. Like how other boulder class dragons ingest rocks. I mean, sand is still rocks, which is very fine. It burrows underground, swimming through the sand, as it's very sensitive to the sunlight, sharing similarities to the Whispering Death. The stealthiness is kind of debatable, as a couple of times the riders actually notice the dragon before it approaches, and then again when it attempts an ambush, it does sneak up on them, even though 50% of the time it fails. The very fact that it eats rocks and blasts them later is the very definition of a boulder class, and the way it hunts implementing its environment, setting up a sand trap like a spore spider, ignoring the small wings bit, because like half of the dragons in that class have normal sized wings compared to their body size anyway. Being picky eaters, well that's debatable. We don't know much about their diets, but they don't seem to be against a Viking meal. The only significant argument I can see against this, that its skin isn't tough or rock-like. It seems quite rubbery and soft. And that's it. So this dragon is not mystery class.
Okay, this next one is a hear me out. Because on a technicality, these next set of dragons are a mystery class dragon because they were implemented in Rise of Berk. And for funsies, I'm gonna include them. Just don't take this bit too seriously. For instance, one of the dragons that are confirmed to be the mystery class is Dragon from Shrek.
You're a girl dragon!
Though I personally think this classification isn't accurate. But before we get into that, I kind of want to have a little tangent here. Realistically, she could be in the How to Train Dragon universe. The entirety of How to Train Dragon takes place at the end of the Viking era and is predominantly within the Barbaric Archipelago, which is just north of Scotland, west of Norway, and northeast of like Iceland, with only having a small snippets of information of what's going on in the wider world. And there are possibilities that other mythical creatures exist.
And he goes hunting for trolls.
Trolls exist!
I know this was a joke by Gobber, but hey, it could be something. For Shrek, it takes place in the Middle Ages, more specifically around the 1422. I found this DVD extra thing with the date on. This is the best quality I can find. And although the stereotypical style of medieval times typically took place in Europe, but because of all the Americanizations in it, I can't see why not for this universe that America had all this fairy tale stuff.
Shrek? Wow. Are you from Europe?
I need to stop theorizing about Shrek. I'm a How to Train Dragon channel. But what I'm ultimately getting at is that theoretically this is possible. Dragon could be a resemblance of a dragon species that never returned to the hidden world. And it's interesting, as far as I'm aware, that she's the only dragon that we see in the Shrek universe. Like as if all the other dragon species have either gone away or been slaughtered. So yeah, if dragon the species was classed, what class do I think it should go in? I feel like that's fairly obvious. I think they should be in Stoker class. Now, in earlier versions of the game, it was originally in there, but I'm just going to judge from the most recent version, and it's categorizing the mystery. Maybe this is a mistake. Either way, it doesn't really change what I think the classification should be. There's a couple of very prominent traits that we do see akin to Stoker class dragons. When we first meet Dragon, she lives within a volcano. I'm not too sure if she bathes within lava, but having heat resistance does definitely help. Also, her firepower is a giant flamethrower. Because of her size, it torches the place, very similar to dragons like the Red Death. There's been an instance where it's hot enough to melt metal. I don't know, that was maybe a prop sword, so it might have been not as strong. But looking into other characteristics of this dragon, they are very strong, holding many creatures and flying long distances, and being fairly agile despite their size. There's also the fact that she's been seen to smash through rocks and even recover fairly quickly from a big thump to the head. Behaviourally, she is similar to other Stoker class dragons, being very territorial and killing anything that trespasses in their grounds. She's also very protective, as if you gain the affection of a dragon, they're extremely loyal. I mean, she's good friends with Shrek and always likes to help out. And she likes to hang out with the girls. So although this could be an individualistic thing, the species could be quite motherly. I don't know. Either way, dragon should be a Stoker class, which inevitably is going to leave us to the Drunkies. Honestly, they would suit the mystery class because, look at them. But we're taking this very serious, very, very serious. This is great importance. They do have mischievous personalities, and they do tend to stick together during a fight and use their unconventional looks to confuse their enemies. Like their mother, they can fly using their wings and tail, and attack by breathing fire. However, in this situation, they resemble more of the distinctive hybrid dragons over the Nightlight hybrid dragon situation, where their parents are both the same species but have many genetic variation, leading them to be very clearly Snifflehide class, whereas more of the distinctive hybrids are fused dragons of different species, typically taking the class of one of the parent species. So it would make sense for donkeys to also be Stoker class like dragon, unless donkey counts as a mystery class dragon. Which could be possible as we look into this next category, the sheep. Yes, at the time of recording, the sheep are classified as mystery, which I think works the best. But I'm putting them at the end here and not in the main segment because they're not a dragon and this is just a jokey bit. So, what makes the sheep mystery class? Across their body, they can produce this hair-like substance called wool. Used to keep themselves warm and is an additional layer of protection. However, they are particularly weak against fire, especially the Proudstock, whose distinctive locks glimmer against the drab of the target sheep. To counter this, they wear some armor, which makes them fireproof to the dragon's flames. And it also acts as camouflage, as dragons think they are one of them, making them superb in stealth, probably the best compared to all the dragons we've covered. However, only the most chivalrous sheep would win this. Each lamb nuzzles amongst the cozy folds of their mother's fleece, dream of attending these glories as they grow. Moving on to some other individuals, Wolly Polymath is said to be book smart, surrounding themselves in books, paper and ink. Everything his giant brain needs to stay stimulated, or he just likes to munch on the paper. The Bellworthy is the most valiant of all the sheep, standing out compared to their normally sheepish behaviour. And then Ruby Nose, secretly likes to have Christmas decorations on it over Snuggletog. That's not really related to any class placements. I think that's just a sweet little tidbit. Behaviourally, they are kind of interesting. They seem to not really care about their surroundings until the last minute. But they are also able to strategize, as they once tried to escape the Isle of Berk because of all the dragons. So yeah, these animals do have unusual abilities, especially compared to ones in the other classes, and attitudes similar to other mystery classes.
The Tidal Class. Almost all Tidal Class dragons live in the ocean, although some of them have amphibian-like biology allowing them to survive on land as well. Few of these dragons are able to create flames, but many can generate electricity. Dragons of this class, when trained, are exceedingly loyal. They are generally larger of those of other classes. Despite this, they are usually very peaceful ocean dwellers who prefer to be left alone. And today I'll be looking at why these specific set of dragons are Tidal Class, and why some are not. If you're of legal drinking age, take a shot every time I say water, ocean, or any other synonyms of that nature.
You'd be dead.
The first category is the Water Boys. These are the most standard water dragons you would think of. There's nothing too special about them, they just fit into the Tidal Class almost to a T. For example, and the poster child of the Tidal Class, the Skuldron. Every time we see this dragon, it's in the water. Whether it's in a cove, the ocean, or water trough, its existence is based in H2O. So much so, when it's outside the water, in a matter of hours, it could dry out and die. It's adapted for life in the water, developing a tail fluke to propel itself, like dolphins and whales, tracking enemies using electroreception similar to that of sharks. This is something I would love to explain further in its own video, but that's then. And Skuldrons can stay under the water for long periods of time, going without oxygen similar to those of extinct marine reptiles. So there is a lot of similarities to marine life. They are exceptional swimmers, of course, keeping up with smaller, more manoeuvrable sea shockers in a pursuit, and able to dive deep ignoring the high pressures. It's clear that this creature is very water-based, enough to justify its tidal classification, but it has more. The firepower isn't a typical fireball or electricity. It spits out scalding water by sucking in the seawater and boiling it internally. It's just more advanced kettle. In addition, they have venom. Yeah, it's just an extra thing that's not really indicative of a tidal class, but it's there, I guess. Oh, in School of Dragons, in the Dragon Tactics, there was a steam attack that you can poison the opponent, suggesting it can eject the venom into the boiling water, which I think is a really cool idea and amp the deadliness of this dragon. RIP School of Dragons. However, these are the most aggressive tidal class dragons, seeming to attack first and ask questions later. But I've said this before on this series, and I'll repeat myself for this video, I believe not every dragon needs to fit into every single point in the category, just the majority of them. On a different side of very much the same coin is the Thunderdrum. This one fills all the asterisk definitions of the tidal class. Although yes, living in the water, sometimes it spends its time outside of the ocean, so it has more amphibian-like adaptations. This is reflected in the biology of this creature. It has tiny arms, which is very emblematic of crocodiles, allowing them to go on land, but not really preferred. Although every time we see them, they seem to be chilling up there. Look, a little dude. Little guy. What are you doing there, little guy? Although they are very much adapted to aquatic life as well, going a long time without needing to breathe air, diving deep, and using water to sneak up on victims. Despite not having fins or flippers, it uses its large wings to propel itself through the water. They use their gigantic mouths to attack or eat other animals, similar to large creatures like whales or whale sharks. And very much like the basking shark. The firepower is very interesting as well, having a sonic blast. Sonic blast! A strong concussive sound that can kill any human at close range. Sorry, I'll stop doing my Stoic impression. It's so powerful that it can be heard and felt miles away. It's also been stated to lower the air pressure in its way, making it feel cold. The Thunderdrums have developed a system to offset sound blast by regulating wave frequencies. A whole system just to prevent the shouting to hurt it. Although as a result, the Thunderdrums are partially deaf. No worries though, they have great sense of smell to pick up the slack. These dragons are incredibly tough, withstanding powerful smacks and dishing out powerful blows. Don't say it, don't say it, don't say it, don't say it. Once trained, these dragons are loyal and very protective, especially over their young, more over their riders. Poor Stoic. Stoic got done dirty.
I guess another water boy is the Mist Twister. These dragons seem to spend more time out of water than they do in it, and with the dual heads, this feels like it should go with the multi-head category under the mystery. However, these dragons do just fit in with the tidal class, so we're here. To be fair, when we see other individuals of the species, they are hanging out in the Healing Spring, but unfortunately, every other ability is kinda neutral in terms of class placement, or a little atypical of tidal. First, let's go through the firepower. Like the Zippleback, the species exhibits two firepower types. However, these could be used individually or together. One head breathes ice mist, while the other breathes hot mist. When combined together, it creates a dense fog obscuring dragons' visions. They've been seen to create ice structures as well, and when quickly heated with their other breath, they can create a wave of mist blowing away enemy dragons. So their firepower is quite versatile, but it's not typically tidal, nor really typically any other class. Ice blasts have been seen throughout a few dragon species from many different classes, and some tidal dragons have possessed fire, though it is quite rare. However, when they're Titanwing, both heads have shown to have hot mist, though one side is white smoke and the other is black smoke. However, this could be an individual thing, as this dragon has a cultural connection to others of its species, as a guardian to the healing spring, so it could be a Titanwing thing, or an individual thing. I looked on Rise of Berg, but their firepower is shown to have a white fog, so I still have no clue either or. As they seem to reside in snowcanos, they seem to prefer a mixture of cold and warm environments, like the hot springs in a snowy mountain. But as the environment is mainly in the ice realm, they would have to have more of a cold resistance, which makes sense if they like swimming in water. It's also been seen when they're in a hot, dry area, they can't last long, needing to hydrate regularly. Some other individuals like Weatherhurl and Glimmer and Gloma has also been shown to like the mixture of habitats, with darting through the dark clouds and sunny skies to relish, or absorbing the sun's rays by the surface before heading back down to the depths. So is there anything else? Not really. In Rise of Berg they are shown in a water display. They're seen as fairly intelligent, quickly understanding June's command despite never seeing a human before, and have typical stamina, strength and speed of that of a Zippleback, meaning they could hold their own surprisingly well. Both heads have differing personalities, more akin to the type of breath they produce, with the blue head being more calm, cool and collective, while the red being more aggressive and bold. This dragon is a prime example of one that should be dual classed, being Stoker and Tidal, but for some reason they just sticked with one, and it does seem to have a slight edge towards Tidal, so I guess it makes sense. Next is the Floodfang, a dragon from the non-realms. These are medium-sized dragons who primarily live in the ocean, or large bodies of water. I'll be honest, I don't know if this counts as the ocean or not, kinda underground in the hidden world. Their tidal classification is very clear, with fins on top, large wingspans to help swim and fly, in addition to a large gaping mouth to help gobble up those bioluminescent algae, I guess? Or organisms? The Dragon Club end up using fireflies to lure them, which wouldn't make sense if they lived in the ocean. Anyway, they also have large tusks, which we don't know what they're used for. It could be fights between rivals, break up the environment to help them navigate through it, or any other purpose that we don't know about. They seem to be based on a mix of manta ray, basking / whale sharks, all animals which live in the ocean. Additionally, their firepower is very similar to others of the tidal class, sucking up water to spew out later, but because of their size, they could store lots in one go. They seem to be pretty adept in the water as well, easily sneaking up to Tom from below, and the Floodfangs seem fairly peaceful. Not much aggression is shown, but perhaps a little territorial over their food source. They also hang out in pairs or small social groups, which is cute. But yeah, these guys are pretty tidal.
Next is the Slithersong. How do you pronounce this? These are rare dragons being nearly hunted to extinction by Skuldrum. Described as one of the fastest swimmers, it glides through the water at supersonic speeds hunting prey. This complements its firepower. The faster it goes, the more acid it can churn up and shoot. It's a slow shot, but powerful once it's built up in stream. It's a mixture of their mild, toxic saliva and seawater. Some possess darker colours to assist in the camouflage at night, adopting flukes and dorsal fins / spines to help it in life in the water. And lastly, the Slithersong are shy creatures, but once tamed, they are incredibly loyal, trustworthy, and protective of their riders. Last in this category is the Tide Glider. This graceful tidal class dragon doesn't simply swim through the water, it dances. They're extremely agile in the water and riding the wave. Judging by the way it moves, I can see the dragon gliding across the water's surface for hours after its namesake, so it's safe to assume it has impressive stamina. Being similar sizes to that of a Skuldrum and Thunderdrum, their strength could be akin as well. Looking at the animal itself, it has adaptations suiting that of an aquatic lifestyle. Flippers, fluke, back spikes acting like dorsal fins allowing the creature to turn quickly. But getting more speculative, I'm interested in the structures on its head, the spines sticking out. It reminds me a lot of electric receptors, commonly found in aquatic predators for detecting prey, or even escaping. Their colours tend to be bluish, helping them to camouflage, which helps them when they are skittish in nature, but when observed at a distance they are said to look calm, graceful and peaceful. So by their lifestyle and the way the animal looks is very much like those of the tidal class. But let's look at its firepower, as there are some similarities to some others, like the venom or the poison. Nobody is certain, but it could spray water or and acid. It looks like it could be a concoction of seawater and acid mixed together. Coupled with their venom makes it fairly deadly, kinda like the Skuldron, although we don't know what temperature it comes out as. It could be boiling hot, considering in the idle animations there is steam coming out of its mouth. Lastly, something that's indicative of the mystery class is that it has healing saliva. Yeah, this can be mixed with its firepower as well, so I'm curious if the animal could choose between the venom or the healing. Alternatively, it could heal the wound but get you infected with its venom and then promptly die. The next category is the Electric Boys. Dragons who, much like the electric eel, contains electric potential energy in the body to use it defensively or offensively. Starting with the obvious dragon, the Sea Shocker. It gets its namesake via the ability to stun and generate electrical fields around itself effectively underwater. They emit electricity from the males that could be utilised in a bite or a short-ranged attack. By joining their heads together, it can create protective electrical fields similar to that of Skrills. And before anyone gets any ideas, no, they are not related. This is most likely an example of convergent evolution. But the electric pulse can launch a human up to 60 feet, so there is some power behind that light show. So other than filling in a niche of a description of the tidal class dragons, what else does it have to support its placement? At this point, do I even need to say it? This animal is well adapted to life in the ocean, being one of the most speediest and most manoeuvrable out of all the ones in this class. To be fair, not the hardest achievement considering half of them are as large as the ocean itself. In support of their movement they have echolocation, like dolphins, porpoises and whales, to help navigate through the endless abyss. Oh yeah, content warning for anyone with thalassophobia, I guess is a bit late now. And their ability for bioluminescency is like real life examples. This could be used in multiple ways to attract mates in the ocean depths or prey as they think it's food. Even looking at their weaknesses, they are more dependent on the sea compared to some others, like drying out on land, flightlessness, which is kind of dumb, and pod dependency. Very indicative of creatures we've mentioned for like the 100th time. They tend to live in deep icy waters, with their spines on the back breaking through the ice. Sea Shockers mainly seem friendly. They like working in teams coming from their pod dependency, by helping out and defending others. So yeah, another fishy boy. Last up, the Electric Boys. Yes, surprisingly there is only two despite the whole asterisk in the description. The Shockjaw.
This tidal class swimmer emits bioelectricity from a gentle jolt to a lethal bolt. The bolt emitted can be strong enough to take down an entire ship and its crew. So a very powerful electrical attack, coming from their tendrils underneath their jaw. Interestingly, they also have bioluminescence supporting their aquatic adaptations in the depths of the water, and dorsal fins on its body to aid in the swimming and flying, in which they do well, as it's another one described as being one of the fastest. In terms of personality, they tend to keep to themselves, and won't attack unless threatened. So with abilities, adaptations, and the main habitat being suited for life in the ocean, it's clear that this dragon is definitely tidal class. This category coming up is the big boys. Look at the big boy. Not quite small or medium, but not quite huge alphas. These dragons are predicted to be as big or slightly bigger than whales, so definitely nothing to scoff at in terms of size. Like the Fathomfin, only seen as a tease in the Serpent Air, but fleshed out more in the unreleased comic The Fire Tides. Luckily, Audrey interviewed Richard Hamilton, one of the authors of the comics, and gave us more details about the dragon. Just looking at where Hiccup first sees the dragon already confirms its class placement in the ocean, and being whale-like with the expandable gullet, becoming translucent, allowing anything inside to see their surroundings. I don't know what's more morbid, being eaten by a whale and consumed by darkness, or witnessing the last glimpse of freedom you once had. But based on the descriptive characteristics of the dragon and the small amount we have seen, there's a clear reference to aquatic life adaptation, and it being a rare deep-sea dweller supports the classification. Although the one we see in the Serpent's Air is actually a Titan wing. I know people are going to point this out in the comments, but I'm aware this is now the canonical depiction of the dragon. In terms of direct canon behaviour, there's little to go on, but judging by just chilling there, it seems peaceful. In the Fire Tides, however, it seems to be caring and intelligent, saving Hiccup and Toothless's life.
The Fathomfin returns to the sunken city, and we realize the reason that it has air is because the Fathomfin keeps going up to the surface and getting a big mouthful of air and bringing it down and blowing it into the ruins to keep these guys alive. We then find out that there's another storm, and that is why the Fathomfin deposited Hiccup and Toothless there rather than carrying them back to Berg or somewhere else. Like the Fathom Fin could tell that the storm was coming, it could feel it in the currents, and so there was sort of like a ticking clock and a reason why she would keep supplying air to the ruins to keep them alive there until the storm finally passes.
Also using its firepower to alert the Dragon Riders. It does this by spitting a flammable soluble gel. By the sounds of it, it's kind of like Monstrous Nightmare Gel, or perhaps an acid-like substance, similar to that of a couple of Tidal class dragons. Next is the Submaripper. Oh wait, no, it's the Ripwrecker in the games, which is what I'll refer to them as due to the reveal of the true Submaripper in Race to the Edge. So what is the Ripwrecker? Well, it does have similarities to that of the Submaripper, like creating whirlpools sucking in Viking ships. They have an acid blast that can fire at opponents. Judging by the size of this creature, it could be quite a lot in one go. But the depiction in the comics shows this dragon literally ripping ships in half, using its own size and raw power, latching onto the ships using their tails. And lastly, it has a prehensile tail grabbing Vikings off a ship and drowning them. Upon further inspection, there isn't much in terms of unique features suiting a life in the ocean, other than perhaps a bigger build for more flubber, being mainly blue in colour for camouflage, and wings higher on the body to help it propel itself in water. Oh, and we do see them diving deep into the water. Even their behaviour deviates from the traditional tidal class, said to be very territorial and attack anything that disturbs them, or trespasses on their property. But honestly, just living in the ocean, being very bloody tough with high endurance and strength, with the abilities to create whirlpools is enough to go into the tidal class. There isn't too much information on this variation, due to it conflating with the other Submaripper from the TV show. It too can create whirlpools to suck Viking ships, even powerful enough to drag down dragons from out of the sky, and then use the ammunition to fire back. In addition to this, they can create tidal waves by slamming their massive body against the water's surface in order to drown its victims. To be fair, pretty much all large tidal class dragons could do this, but it shows their superior intellect compared to some others, sharing similarities of that of orcas using smart hunting strategies to overpower their prey, using their size as an advantage. We've seen this creature being chained under the water for days on end, so it wouldn't surprise me if they can hold their breath for long periods of time, or straight up have gills. They appear to be quite aggressive and attack anything that gets near it, but the example we saw most likely had a bad experience with humans, and was chained up, so I don't know if that characteristic really holds any water. Tisk. Why am I like this? Although sinking innocent Viking ships while being in the depths could also be a sign of aggressive behaviour. Adding on to all this, they are great swimmers. I have no idea how, due to them having small wings with no flippers or fins, not even webbed feet. But they are smart enough to use the ocean to their advantage by sneaking up on the enemy shellfire to get the upper hand. So yeah, this dragon is very clearly tidal class. But this dragon is also labelled as a tracker class,
which I personally think it doesn't have a strong enough justification for having it, but adding on in addition to tidal class, I don't see any harm, so sure. Though the tracking abilities it does have just seems like standard adaptations that an animal would have living in the ocean. They react to vibrations in the water above, and will follow them in hopes of encountering food. It also hunts prey by sensing their vibrations in the water, which would be more typical of predatory dragons. We know the Submarippers are a natural enemy of the Shellfire, and possibly eat Skuldrons, as we saw one struggle getting out of the whirlpool in the episode. They do also have a distinctive foul smell. This is more of a weird quirk rather than a class-specific ability, and it's not overly clear what this is for, whether or not it attracts prey or wards off other giant sea dragons. So yeah, a tidal tracker class dragon, I guess? Ooh, here's a big boy from the 9 realms, the Octofin. What appears to be inspired by both crocodilians and octopuses, with speculations of this dragon being the origins of the Kraken myth. Appearing to not have a firepower, it can release black ink from the back of its head to obstruct the vision of an enemy. It seems to cover the animal more so than blind the target. However, the Octofin is able to see through the thick veil, giving them an advantage in the situation, or in general their habitat, in the deep dark depths. The Octofin could have a firepower, but we have yet to see it. This dragon is incredibly strong, using its multiple prehensile tails to carry heavy objects through the water, and then being equipped with suckers like octopus tentacles. Anything this creature does grasp would have an incredibly difficult time escaping. Additionally, they are well adept at combat. In the episode, the dragon scuffles with a Shellfire, a dragon known for its extreme toughness and power. It holds its own for a while, showing impressive endurance by withstanding many hits, and agility by easily navigating through the water. Also, having impressive intelligence helps, as it was able to recognize the assistance the Dragon Club was trying to give it, and in return, it saved Tom's life, and carried the Bactosphere to the surface. They could be a little bit more passive in nature than some, which possibly allowed Buzzsaw to capture the individual in the first place. But these dragons do have a little bit of sass and fight in them. They are not afraid to protect themselves, their home, and others. This is a pure water boy, as it's unable to fly, and it's clear why it's in the tidal class.
He's challenging the alpha to protect you.
Yes, it's the alphas! Not surprising, considering the ocean is the largest habitat on the planet, and space to allow creatures to grow to such behemoth sizes. Oh, and they haven't really got gravity to worry about.
Screw gravity.
Quah, the very big boy, the Bewilderbeast, the absolute unit. However, they seem to be a protector of sorts of smaller dragons, providing food, protection and shelter to all those who follow it. Despite the authoritative figure, they are quite reclusive and non-aggressive in demeanour most of the time, because when it comes to protecting the territory, they are very formidable, using their massive tusk for great clashes, powerful ice breath attack, freezing anything in the way instantly, and mind manipulation to control others to do its bidding. According to Deep Dubois, the mind control uses ultrasound, which is only affected by dragons. So we've established that they are large, powerful and alphas. How are they tidal? Well, considering they like chilling in water seems to fit the description. They have a few adaptations for life around the water. We've seen a Bewilderbeast appear from the water with a great force and spend time underneath for very long periods, with wings and fins connected to the main body to assist in its swimming. I believe the spines along the body mostly help sense the vibrations in the water. Even their firepower is water-based. They suck the seawater and store it in the gullet in their necks, and when we release with their icy breath, most likely a chemical like liquid nitrogen or something, freezing the water on impacts. Further speculation is needed, a topic on an individual video on this dragon. So yeah, from all these features, it can only fit in one class, the tidal.
Now onto a dragon I've reclassified, the Shellfire.
This is another tidal class dragon that is huge. The one we've seen race to the edge is a Titanwing, and seen as a rival to the Submariner. Despite being quite timid by nature, only surfacing rarely, although they are not afraid to protect their home, using their armour and protruding horns as defence or offence. This has given me like armorfish vibes, like the Dunkleosteus, I don't know if I said that right. Due to this, they are incredibly durable, withstanding onslaughts of attacks, and carrying a dragon-proof metal submarine on its back with little to no hindrance, but they do struggle against smaller and more nimble creatures. We also see these are fast swimmers, able to dive deep in the water in a matter of seconds, to be honest. Look at it go! And of course they are capable of staying under the water for very long periods of time, or they have gills as well. There is a mention that when threatened, they can expel red algae from their gills that temporarily blinds and sickens their target.
This species could also be an alpha species, as in Rise of Berk has confirmed this individual seen race the edge, later had a group of dragons following it, and we also fight against a few other Shellfires in the Alpha Clan segment of Titan's Uprising. But once more, explaining all the nuance of this will have to be done in another video, as it will be way too long for this. But for now, yes, this is an alpha dragon.
The last thing to mention is their amazing firepower. One that doesn't really suit the description, but is really cool, so who cares? Although it's kind of electric based. Anyway, they can shoot large plasma charged boulders in a high trajectory ranged over a mile, being fired in rapid successions, able to destroy entire islands in minutes. This most likely works underwater for powerful attacks. Failing that, they could just ram the opponent. But they are a formidable tidal class dragons that you wouldn't want to cross. The other alpha is an interesting creature, thought to be extinct and said to bring the end of the world, the Purple Death. Able to create massive sea quakes, so big that the Vikings believed it brought Ragnarok, the end of the world event in Norse mythology, where a lot of gods die, even Odin the Allfather. And I see why they think that, because on top of the quakes, by the sheer size of this thing, it can flatten islands. It's looking like Jormungandr, the world serpent, and coupled with an eruptive wave of fire exploding from their mouth, it can wipe out Viking civilizations. So why is this thing a tidal class? Plumes of fire, earthquakes, that's Boulder or Stoker class, right? No, because this comes out of the depths. It attacks Alvin ships, creating whirlpool because it's just so big, and it resembles a few other dragons from the same class as well. We don't know much about this creature, but the only time we do see it, it utilizes the sea. We don't know if this thing could fly or even go on land, but this existential threat definitely comes from the seas, and therefore a tidal class. Last of the alphas is the luminous crayfin. Yes, that little thing from School of Dragons. I actually changed the position of this dragon in the categories due to the information that was revealed to us before the School of Dragons got shut down. And that's that they can grow to be absolute behemoths, looking like a world turtle or the lion turtle from Avatar. This is a personal favourite concept of mine, hence why Doterra is one of my favourite Pokemon. So it's devastating we never actually got to see this in game. So why is this tidal? Well, it's a turtle, with wings goofily strapped onto the sides to give it a resemblance of a dragon. Yes, this thing is still technically a dragon, being able to swing very well due to flippers and fins on the tail, in combination with lasting long periods under the water, shows clear ocean adaptations in this animal. So much so it hinders it when it's on land. Due to these things, they're seen as fast swimmers, and combined with jagged rocks on their back, it's said in Bork's papers that they can pierce through a Viking ship, cutting it in half. So Lumi, why were you so useless? So what else do they have? Well, they can produce a low frequency sound, likely a communication method like whales, covering a vast distance due to sound travelling easier in water. In the same vein, the bioluminescence is thought to communicate with others in the deep sea, and allow the user to see. The luminous crayfin gets its namesake from this ability. Lastly, they have a flashbang. We see this ability used to temporarily blind their enemies. Note there isn't a firepower, which is interesting. It either has one but not seen, or just doesn't have it. Well, hold your horses there, previous me. Yes, while editing the video, I've actually seen a firepower that it does have. An explosive ball, kind of like Goku's Spirit Bomb. We see it as part of the drawings for the Leviathan concept. Although it looks like it's fire-based, this dragon is still very much tidal. First, in terms of behaviours, they are friendly, peaceful, and intelligent, making friends easily in social settings. It's unknown whether or not the adults are socially inclined or solitary. It's unknown whether or not this dragon contains any alpha qualities, but I put it here because of sort of more headcanon stuff. I feel like it would have, judging by the size and how it kind of played in the role of the story. Kind of looks like a wise old sage type thing. But if you disagree, you can lob it in back into the big boys. There's no real right or wrong answer with these categories. The last category is the Nut, Tidal Class Dragons. These dragons, I believe, shouldn't be in the Tidal Class, as they have far more similarities to that of others. For example, the Windwalker. It's an odd dragon. It has some links to a Tidal Class Dragons, with it being crocodile-like, and a version of the firepower that are like others. But other than that, this is more of a sky dragon, rather than an ocean one, with main depictions and descriptions of this animal in reference to the wind and storms, right to its name being Windwalker. Looking at the dragon, it doesn't really have any adaptations for living life in the ocean. Even their habitats are just random locales that's just not the ocean. The only thing I could find it linking to the Tidal Class is the abilities, and even then it's still very questionable. For instance, it has a Water Blast in School of Dragons. Great, a water ability, very Tidal Class. Yet in Rise of Berk, it has a fireball firepower. It even has a third firepower with Electrokinesis, which I personally think it fits this dragon more, and has more lore around it. So my personal headcanon is that it has that electric power. Let's look into it more. It can absorb lightning from the storm clouds to generate an electric field around its body, just like the Nightfury and the Skrill. The speed even rivals those of the Strike class, a big contender for it to be in that classification, being described as like gale force winds. So yeah, this dragon is definitely more Strike class than anything else. Yes, the electric firepower is a descriptor of the Tidal Class, but how it interacts is like other Strike class dragons. On top of that, with no references to water or ocean life or adaptations, it's safe to say this dragon should not be Tidal Class. But wait. There's more. Some individuals have phosphorescent wing patches. Try and say that word. Some individuals have phosphorescent wing patches, which reflects the light from a starry night sky. They can even make shooting stars appear in the patches, with legends claiming that any wish on one of the shooting star reflections will come true. Aww. It's still not tidal. Oh, and the behaviour and personality is that they are kind and gentle, yet brave and protective of their eggs. Which is like other Tidal Class, but at this point, who cares? Am I right, gamers? Any of these traits could be on any dragon. The Sand Wraith, a weird Tidal Class dragon. I very nearly kept it in another category due to having some adaptations for an aquatic lifestyle. Larger lungs to hold its breath under the water for longer periods of time, and burying itself in the seabed to ambush its prey. But the rest of the biography implies they spend more time on beaches.
Sighting a sand wraith is no day at the beach.
Hiccup was the first to catch sight of this Tidal Class Titan when it was discovered resting on the coast of Impossible Island. My fellow School of Dragons administrators and I recently took a fishing trip to get some more food for our hungry dragons. We were all laughing and having a good time until Bucket took one step and something moved below him. Come to know, it was the infamous Sand Wraith.
And in combination of it burying to avoid the sunlight, it reminds me way too much of another non-tidal class dragon. Now, hanging around beaches isn't necessarily not tidal. It's stronger than absolutely no references to near the sea at all. But this dragon has so many other similarities to other classes, as a result I kind of need stronger reasons for it to remain as a tidal class dragon. Like, the Mudraker exists. Ironically, both the dragons I've mentioned in this bit, I've actually put in the Nox section in both of their videos, suggesting one of them could be tidal and the other boulder, which I kind of think this dragon should be as well. From the burying behaviour to the firepower, which is spitting hardened balls of sand and fire, like ingesting rocks and launching it back out. But for me, what tips it over the edge is the known subspecies, the desert wraith, who live in the sands of the desert with absolutely no dependency on the ocean, and the sweet wraith, which honestly is identical to the others, it's just smaller, bright pink, and it's said in legend to let Vikings fall in love after an attack. But note, nothing to do with the oceans or aquaticness. Oh, and being a Fury-like dragon doesn't help it as well. They are typically Stryke, and the Sand Wraith are described as smart, on par with the other Furies, although I do personally prefer some of the other Furies to be in multiple classes. But their temperament is interesting as well, being shown to be fierce rather than docile, although a couple of tidal class dragons I've mentioned before have had this attitude, but it doesn't match the description we're given. But that's okay, as I mentioned before, not every descriptor needs to fit in this category. Most of them, however, should, and I believe the Sand Wraith doesn't have that. Just having light adaptations to spend time in water I don't think is quite strong enough to put it in this class, where it has a lot more stronger, bolder tendencies. Thus this dragon is not tidal class. The Sharp class. All of them possess sharp body parts. Most can fire extreme sharp poisonous projectiles from their bodies, which can quickly be regenerated. These dragons are vain, prideful, adored being stroked. Well, generally made a fuss of really. They especially love compliments due to their nature. And today I'm going to be looking at why these specific set of dragons are Sharp class, and why some are not. Not gonna lie, this description needs to be updated as it barely matches any of the dragons still in the class, and especially the dragon that fits it the most is no longer in it. But alas, I'll try my best. Sharp body parts, fire them / potentially poisonous, vain and prideful, love being made a fuss of. Let's go. The first category, and by far the largest, are the cutters. Ones who like to chip chop or hack and slash for various reasons. For instance, and one of the most well-known Sharp class dragons, the Razor Whip. With a body of metal-like scales, these dragons can use their tails to cut through almost anything. Wood, rock, little isn't affected by these strikes.
Can a Viking get some privacy?
Which makes sense when you see how impressive their strength is, regularly resisting multiple attacks, and flinging a whole tree at Hiccup at one point. Good thing Toothless was on the ball, otherwise this would have been a very abrupt end to the franchise.
Look out!
May the Valkyries welcome you.
Oh, and who can forget, their babies are able to lift entire humans, and Snotlout.
Ah!
Oh, sicky! The primary way they do these achievements is through their tail. It being prehensile allows objects to be picked up, grasped and flung, as well as shoot sharp barbed spines with great accuracy, but they are not poisonous. Despite this, Fishleg says that their tears could be toxic, and there's other descriptions saying that their breath could be potentially as well, although we haven't seen any of this. I like the idea that the Razor Whips have toxins in the body, like other Sharp class dragons, but due to the metallic-like scales, it can only secrete through unusual methods. In addition to high strength, they also supplement their cutting abilities with high speed. We've seen Windshear hold her own against Toothless at one point. Oh, and there's an individual from Rise of Berk called Sawtooth, who can curl up into a ball and roll into entire enemies. I also want to look at these dragons' firepower, as we can see how this tracks with others to see if there's a trend. In all honesty, this aspect is the most irrelevant, but it's particularly unique, so let's have a look. A whitish bluish flame, so insanely hot fire. Okay, I'm just gonna say it, this is an Nadder 2.0, but without any of the tracking abilities. These dragons are still really sick. Oh, and lastly, are they vain and prideful? It's really subjective. We see Windshear through a whole host of emotions, so it's really hard to say, but she does love being scrubbed. Their babies like to be nuzzled, that's kind of it. Some descriptions call them very aggressive and very dangerous, which tracks with their protective nature, especially with males eating their own offspring.
And there is a subspecies in the Nine Realms, the Crystal Whip. Once again, I usually won't be covering the subspecies that much, but this is quite distinctive in this scenario, as the firepower has changed into a fireball, and it can create create tornadoes, and it can manipulate the winds and clouds in interesting ways, setting it like for a fiery inferno, which could vibe a little bit more Stoker-like.
But other than that, this is the most sharp class dragon currently in this listing, so a good basis for others. Next is a classic, the Timberjack. Annoyingly, this dragon has only been reserved for background cameos, and thus, despite being in the franchise for a long time, there is little information about it. But the information we do know, yeah, it's very clearly sharp. The dragon loves to chop down forests using their razor sharp wings. The reason why they do this is to collect timbers and other materials for their nests. And while resting, they use their wings like pitch tents to protect themselves, as they can be vulnerable on land, but they do offer warmth and protection for smaller dragons and sometimes Vikings if it likes you. Their wings can also act like shields blocking any kind of fire attacks. So another sharp class dragon, quite protective in nature. They are graceful gliders flying over oceans, migrating from island to island with no sign of fatigue. So coupled with their surprising speed and maneuverability from the lack of legs, you wouldn't want to be on the bad side of this dragon, which could be temperamental at the best of times. They are quite sensitive animals, preferring quiet and calmness, but when attacked, betrayed or offended, they can quickly turn those wings from shelter to guillotine. If you're able to scratch its back, however, it will be your friend for life. Cute. Lastly, the firepower is oil-based, used to start fires from the kindle it collects, being slightly more viscous and hotter than the average firepower.
And there is the 9 realms variation, with the only change being teeth added to its wings. Not literal teeth, kind of like on saws, but also not to be extremely nitpicky, it would actually hinder its performance in cutting through forests, as teeth are added for grip, and you will need to do a soaring-like motion. I don't want to have a go at the design too much, as I did that in my review of the 9 realms, but the spirit is still there, that it's designed to cut things down and chop things up. Yeah.
Honestly, not too much of this dragon fits into the traditional description of the sharp class, but due to the main ability it has, it very much fits in. Just like this impulsive and reckless sharp class. The Hackatoo. The Hacker what? The hack at the wood it enjoys chopping down. Yes, just like the Timberjack, the Hackatoo slices through the timber, but instead of wings, it's an axe-like snout. And funny enough, sometimes it gets stuck in the tree. Oh, it's so adorable. In terms of sharp class attributes, that's kind of it. The nature of this dragon we've said before, it has no fire in parts or venom. The firepower is just a normal fireball, like a Rumblehorn's, but in quick succession before it needs to recharge. But not to be hackaroo, but couldn't more or less every dragon do this? Noticeably, the Hacker 2 more legs. I'm really reaching for these puns. Which could help with the axe chopping for more leverage and stability. But on the different side of the same coin, with that being the next dragon using its tail instead of its face, the Devilish Dervish. This dragon is quoted to be unruly and wild in nature, a dragon considered to be extremely hard to train. But if you're up for the challenge, you can find it in the woods. Follow the path of the torn down trees and you'll find it. They like to gather piles of timber to sleep on. These guys are also fast flyers, and use their scythe-like tail to slice through ships like yak's butter. Yeah, I wouldn't want to mess with this guy. Additionally, their firepower is, plain. Just orange flames, so nothing really notable. And honestly, that's it. It's kind of a reverse Hackatoo, but scarier. Last in the category is the Shivertooth. This frosty boy is oddly enough a prankster, enjoying playing in the snow. But this can have a sinister side to it, as there has been evidence from both Volker and the twins on separate occasions indulging in the mischievous personality of the Shivertooth. I found that the dragon followed them back home. Mixed with their camouflage blending into the snowy environment, perhaps the dragon likes to stalk or distract their opponents before an attack. Being intelligent creatures in both pranks and combat supports this theory. But if you are attacked, I wouldn't fancy your chances. The Shivertooths are said to have the sharpest claws out of any dragon, and have cutting edge scales from the tip of their snout to the end of their tail. Amazing for both offense and defense. In addition, they shoot ice, like the Wolly Howl and the Snow Wraith. And speaking of, they are akin to the speed of one as well. So, although their behaviour and blast isn't like any other sharp class dragon, they have the speed and most importantly, the serration of one. The next category are the Jabbers, ones who tend to poke at their opponents, either physically or from a distance. For example, the Grimgnashers. Sneaky, opportunistic hunters, targeting weakened dragons.
The most dangerous thing about Grimgnashers is their ability to plan and communicate with each other to outsmart their quarry. They circle above their injured prey like carrion birds.
Despite their devilish looks, they just fulfill an ecological niche necessary for the ecosystem.
So how do they hunt their prey? By shooting their teeth. Like sharks, they can regenerate their teeth, but at a much faster rate. In games, they are shown to have a traditional firepower as well, either an orange or green fireball. However, it predominantly uses its teeth darts, as it requires less energy and is more accurate. Oddly enough, they are immune to the Slitherwing's venom, perhaps suggesting toxins within their own body. It would be cool if they were like Komodo dragons, only needing a bite to slowly weaken their prey over time to finish them off. But for the Grimgnashers, it will be in the teeth they fire, and is only strong enough to finish off a weakened animal. As well as being fast and agile dragons, they can swiftly ambush prey with incredible teamwork and communication skills, through having an alpha of the pack. Much like Night Terrors and the next dragon we're talking about, the Woodchippers from the 9 realms. These dragons are interesting, a mixture of beavers and ants, with 2 slight variations, the workers with no wings, and the queen, whom have wings and command over the other dragons, similar to how alpha dragons work, but this is an interspecies relationship. However, this isn't what makes them sharp, it's pretty much just their big gnashers. They live in giant trees where they chew and burrow through it, a very beaverish-like existence. They utilise their giant incisors to chisel away at the wood. In addition, they are superb climbers, clinging onto the side of the tree surface with ease. This could be from their sharp claws, but it's not officially stated anywhere. And that's kinda it with them. They are loyal and trusting of their leaders, but this isn't really a class specific feature, but it works with their individual quirks. But from their way of life and use of sharp appendages on their body, that's good enough reason why they're sharp class. Unfortunately, the species itself wasn't really explored much in the episode. There's also the Speed Stinger. The Velociraptors of the Dragon World. They are fast, aggressive, and intelligent. They use coordinated attacks moving in packs of dozens at a time, all led by their lead Speed Stinger. And as Fishlegs once said,
one drop of their venom can paralyze a human or dragon in an instant.
Out of all the dragons on this list, these are the fastest and the deadliest of all. Despite this, they do have a vulnerable side. They depend on their pack, could easily struggle to survive if dramatically hurt, and are trainable with enough patience and time, and a lot of Speed Stinger anti-venom. Oh, they do have an Acid Blast as well, shown in School of Dragons, but that's only there. Whether or not you count this is up to you. I do think they do have it, but they don't use it much as it doesn't work well with their hunting strategies, but as a desperate move perhaps it becomes useful. Honestly, why they are sharp is quite easy. Speedy, has venom, can jab prey. There's even a group that can run across the ocean. We could go into much more detail, but for the sake of the video, it isn't necessary. But wait until there's an individual video on these guys. There is quite a bit of interesting stuff. But for now, we'll go to the next dragon. One that originated in the live spectacular and then implemented into the games. The Egg Biter. The adults are rarely seen, but the babies are well known from right out the shell to bite the first thing it sees. I guess this counts as a jab or a penetrative attack, viciously biting an opponent. I mean, they do have impeccable jaw strength and can even chomp through metal. The firepower is blue fire, so another one showing hot flames. And looking at the design of the adults closer, they do seem to have a lot of spikes going on. If they utilise them or not has yet to be seen. Speaking of yet to be seen, is the possible sharp class characteristics of this next category, the Normiers. Yeah, the rhyming scheme didn't work for this one, but this is the group that is so plain. The very fact that they have sharp claws or strong teeth with nothing else is the only reason why they are in the sharp class. Like the Wind Striker. This dragon is more known for dive bombing and cutting through the air, which you could argue is a strike class thing, but an individual called Snaggletooth literally headbutts enemies by doing this, especially with that large nasal horn on their head. I could really see this spoiling an opponent's weekend. In terms of firepower, this only supports their dive bombing. They have superheated air. Other than setting foes ablaze, which is just a weaker fire breath to be honest, the warm air rises, lifting the dragon up quickly. This isn't technically stated specifically, but this could be a very logical conclusion to make. Although in Vulcan's Sanctuary they do look like they have a normal fire, helping it illuminate the cave. Honestly, I prefer the former, as it makes the dragon a little bit more unique. But in terms of the class placement, I guess sharp class is the best. The nasal horn does a lot of heavy lifting. Similarly, the Thornridge as well has this class placement from just the horns on its head, as sadly this dragon has nothing else going for it. Its average is strength and pretty good stamina, but none of these are class specific things really. It doesn't even have an interesting firepower, it's just an orange flame, with some individuals apparently having thick streams with yellowish green fire. Wow, oh, how unique. They're even shy too, preferring to stay at the back of the pack, although sometimes they do go in to help fellow dragons. So they could be fairly friendly as well, but that's literally it. Other than the funky horns, this couldn't be more of a generic dragon species, so I guess sharp. But do you know what I guess isn't sharp class? The last category on this list, the not sharp class dragons. Yeah, these dragons have no relation to anything in the descriptions or patterns we've discovered, and have stronger indications to other classes, such as the Raincutter. These dragons love hunting on rainy days. They eat wiggly worms in the fresh soil, digging them up using their chins. And apparently their firepower isn't affected by the rain at all, although depending on the game, it could be different. In School of Dragons, and even in Rise of Berg in the description and the defend game mode, they have fireballs, and even smoke coming out of their nose. But in the Brawl game mode, it can also launch water blasts, both in streams and bubble forms. This could be interpreted as inconsistencies, but I'd like to see it as proof of how these dragons develop a new firepower, especially in terms of evolution. For example, the Water Blast from the Raincutter has a striking similarity to the methodology of the Skuldron, and even looking at their features, they do look quite similar, leaving me with theories of them potentially having a common ancestor. This is going to be a topic for another time, which I'm very excited to share. It's been in the works for over a year, but it's still going to be ages until you see anything of it, so stay tuned for that. Anyway, back on topic. Why is the Raincutter not sharp class? The only references I can find for the sharp features of this dragon are the fun fact social media posts for the School of Dragons, with it stating a couple of times they have razor sharp fins, cutting through the Raincutter, what? But equally, if not more, there are many references to the wet and frigid environment that it enjoys being in. To be honest, I sat on the fence for a while with this dragon, before thinking it suits the title class best. Because in addition, there is an individual called Ice Cutter, who seeks out the coldest water and likes to reside in frigid pools, suggesting that the Raincutters could like water more than we think. So, I'm now fairly confident with this one. Unlike the Scuttleclaw, because it's just so plain.
Underneath their cuteness, Scuttleclaws are little troublemakers just waiting to cause more mischief. Baby Scuttleclaws are wild, hyperactive powerhouses who are extremely difficult to control, but hard-working when they put their minds to it.
So, a ADHD dragon. How relatable. But in terms of sharp abilities, to be fair, we haven't seen any adults in media apart from the games, which don't give us much. They have a greenish, orangey flame, and the babies are said to have flammable drool. Again, we have yet to see this. They seem to have strong jaws, but that's kind of subjective from the evidence. They are relatively fast flyers, but that's it. Some Scuttleclaws have a higher than average body temperature that require them to cool off by rolling around in the mud or icy puddles of slush. Having a couple of Stoker-like abilities and being very hyperactive with no significant sharp abilities suggests it shouldn't be the sharp class at the very least. And since then there has been a new variation in the 9 realms, but funny enough it puts this dragon even further away from being a sharp class, into more akin to mystery? It has frills on the side, and a siren-like call which angers opponent dragons, quite like the Deathsong. The call disorientates them and angers them, distracting the dragons to either turn on each other or run away, or just distract it long enough so the Scuttleclaw can escape. So yeah, this thing should be sharp. But one I know for sure shouldn't be a sharp class dragon is the Stormcutter, or should I say Storm Smeller, because there isn't any cutting going on, but a lot of smelling, although I understand why it's not called Storm Smeller. It's a very bad name. But these guys should definitely be a tracker class. Some woodland Stormcutters are said to be able to detect subtle scents and shifts in the atmosphere, allowing them to sense the intent of the approaching Viking and dragons. I swear I said this verbatim about the Windgnasher or the Snifflehunch. Also, Cloudjumper didn't fall for the sedative effects of Nepethane, I think that's how you pronounce it, perhaps smelling the chemical in the water, alongside Skullcrusher and Stormfly. You know, both tracker class dragons. It's debatable if he did sense it, it's something more I guess. Also, you could interpret the rotating head as a tracking ability as well. Owls do this as they have fixed eye sockets because they don't have eyeballs, but tubes. It looks weird. This allows them to have absolutely superb vision. Perhaps this is the reason why Stormcasters have this, or simply it helps see more when flying still. Either way, it helps with tracking. And what makes this argument even more solid is that there's nothing mentioned about how sharp they are. Cutting through stuff? Nada. The only thing is in the School of Dragons description.
This sharp class dragon can dart through the skies, swiftly and stealthily.
Which you could argue for many other dragons, or if you want to count this as evidence, then you'll need to include the Rise of Berk one as well.
Flying on 4 wings, the Stormcutter carves spirals in the sky and shoots fiery arcs of destruction at its adversaries.
Which, in all honesty, kinda sounds Stokerish, especially once you see it. That's a lot of fire! However, this isn't me discrediting them at all. They are really cool dragons, especially with their X-Wings, no, not the Star Wars spaceships, that allow them for additional maneuverability. In terms of personality, they tend to like keeping to themselves, whilst being proud and intelligent creatures as well. They can also be seen as sweet at times, especially if they're curious. So some personality traits like the sharp classes, but that's it. If the Deadly Nazzers were dragon enough to move classes, then this would also apply to the Stormcutters. The Stoker class. These dragons are hot-headed fire breathers. A notable characteristic is their high shot limit and impressive firepower. Some of them are even capable of setting themselves or a part of their body on fire. When Stoker class dragons become sick or exhausted, they might even lose their ability to produce flames. So as the name suggests, this is about firepower. The more fire the better, in which today we're going to be looking at these specific set of dragons who are originally categorized in the Stoker class to see whether or not they should be or not. The first category is the Eternal Flame. Dragons that can manipulate fire in interesting ways throughout their body, or are constantly surrounded in intense heat. And yes, I'm going to do a cheesy thing. I'm going to be naming every category based on a song to do with flames. Shut up, it's my video. Starting with the most iconic Stoker class dragon. The Monstrous Nightmare. This dragon has a nasty habit of setting itself on fire through the kerosene-like gel it can produce. It secretes throughout their body, which can ignite for intimidating displays, extra fire damage, or defensive capabilities. In addition, it can spew this gel out, erupting into flames doing incredible harm. Although it's soluble in water, it can still be shot out lit. Physics? And concentrated enough to melt through dry Deathsong amber. Clearly, a trait of the Stoker class is to have very impressive firepower. But what else can this dragon do? Nightmares have fairly impressive senses, as Hookfang was able to find Snotlouts' scent after a day of being apart. He also sensed the Armorwing at the same time as Toothless and Stormfly. Complementing their senses as highly predatory dragons, they are fast flyers, fast walkers, and fast climbers. There is no limit to the terrain that this dragon can't cross, even the ocean, because they are even great swimmers as well. So, surely they're done. Nope. Highly intelligent, often outsmarting their rider, if not given proper respect. Although the primary evidence of this is from Snotlout, who, let's just say, isn't the smartest tool in the shed.
That's really just a nitwit who forgot to fireproof his butt.
Oh, and there's more. Astra discovered a wind blast which pushed down several dragons and their riders, and they have very impressive close quarters combat abilities, being very strong using an assortment of weaponry in battle, be it claws, jaws, tails, and horns. They've even proven to be quite resilient as well, able to withstand a barrage of fire and big hits from Vikings. Because of their combat prowess, they are extremely confident creatures, showing pridefulness and aggression, prioritizing incinerating their surroundings before considering alternative actions. So as they are very fiery, hot-headed dragons full of firepower, it's very clear that this dragon is a Stoker class, and a good reference point to draw from with others on this list. Like the Fireworm. Whoa, new microphone. Yeah, sorry if it's jarring, but from here on out, it will be this. This dragon has some interesting similarities to the Monstrous Nightmare, like having a flammable gel. For the fireworms, it's called the fire comb, which is what their firepower is based on, and it's the structure holding their massive nests together. It's like a mixture between kerosene gel and honeycomb, and it's their source of heat and diet. Using this, they can heat their skin up, making themselves even hotter, too much for a human to touch, or glow brighter. They can set their surroundings on fire, leaving trails of fiery destruction when migrating as a horde. They can also share this heat by snuggling each other, which is so cute. This substance can even restore other Stoker class dragons' flames if they are burnt out, but it's incredibly poisonous to other dragons and Vikings. The Fireworm Queens are able to make a substance called Drottning, which means queen in Old Norse. If this is fed to another female larva, it starts the process of turning them into a new queen, growing multiple times bigger, having higher intelligence, and the ability to lay lots of eggs. Basically, it's like the royal jelly in bees. It's the exact same method in how they create a new queen bee. This is also probably the same substance that they use as venom, as is located in the queen's tongue. Or Drottning could be a mixture comprised of both the venom and the fire cone. It's unsure in the Viking world, but this isn't everything in their arsenal. There's an individual called Flashlight that could create large solar flare by creating a powerful flap, temporarily disorientating anyone who looks at it directly. Or there's an individual called Brightburn, which have a uniquely reflective skin, using it to her advantage as she uses the bright sun to temporarily blind her enemies, leaving them very vulnerable. So with all these interesting abilities, their firepower looks quite basic in contrast, but I think that's a good thing. You don't want too much crazy, or do you? For now, it's very similar to other known Stoker classes, like the Red Death, a flamethrower-esque firepower. I'm sorry, there is crazy. They can combine their firepower with other Stoker class dragons to create a heat wave that can only be described as being near the surface of the sun. So with all that crazy fire, surely they are vulnerable in speed and strength. No. This dragon is crazy. It's very fast on land, it can keep up with nightmares whilst flying, and it can climb cave walls with ease. They can endure many blasts from many other dragons, and with their migration patterns, they are presumably able to fly long distances to get a new home. They are intelligent creatures, knowing when to seek out help from allies. Questionable from Snotlout, but hey, this dragon isn't Einstein. I need to stop this distance Snotlout, man. He has his good moments, but we love him nonetheless. Also, they have great senses. The queen was able to track them down to begin with. And of course, they are highly social. Makes sense when they are dragons who live in behemoth-sized packs. Next are a couple of alphas of the Stoker class, the Red Death and the Green Death. Both of these are extremely similar creatures, but are officially categorized as different species, which, to be honest, is quite a realistic depiction of how species work. But for the sake of discussion about these dragons, and to avoid needless repetition, I'm going to be talking about them at the same time, although I will be pointing out any differences. So how are the Red and Green Death Stoker class? Mainly from their resistance to the extreme heat. They're often seen hibernating inside volcanoes, bathing in the lava within them. Their firepower is an eruption of flames, although the Green Death has been seen to launch a barrage of fireballs as well. So other than the firepower, what other weapons do they possess? A tremendous bite force, demolishing Viking catapults in one go, a nasal horn and a clubbed tail to bludgeon enemies. I wouldn't want to mess with this dragon, especially as their strength and resilience are not like others. This is mainly due to their sheer size, shrugging off multiple dragon blasts. Additionally, we see the Red Death tear through an entire mountain. Despite having multiple eyes, they do possess poor eyesight, but have a good sense of smell, although we haven't seen the full capabilities of these. Lastly, people believe that the Red Death has mind controlling, which I have to disagree, mainly through how it's presented and the lack of utility of it in the final fight, especially against Toothless and the fact that the dragons just leave. There is more to this, but it isn't overly relevant of why these dragons are Stoker class. For now though, let's move on to the next category. Disco Inferno. This category is derived of the groups of dragons who have insane firepower, so much so, they're definitely Stoker because of it. For example, a dragon that first appeared in the Life Spectacular, the Gobsucker. These small stocky dragons are not intelligent, with some often mistaking rocks as eggs. They are also known for eating anything they can find, which often leads them cleaning up any leftovers from Vikings. This kinda sounds like Boulder class. So why are they Stoker? Well, from their poor diets, they emit terrible gas, described to smell like rotten eggs, which Vikings often warn other Vikings about when approaching this creature, especially as they can ignite it. Yes, this dragon has flammable farts, and it's the best thing in How to Train Your Dragon. I'm trying so hard to keep a straight face. Using this firepower, they can propel themselves at very impressive speeds, help it take off the ground, and fly straight. Watch out, Nightfury! We have a new fastest dragon in town! Gobsuckers are very strong dragons compared to their size, and coupled with their nasal horns, I would even watch out from the front, especially as these dragons also have an acid blast, which can easily burn through enemies. So, from acidic projectiles to explosive farts, I'll be very wary of this seemingly docile dragon, and why it's pretty Stoker. Next is the new dragon from the 9 realms, the Flamethrower. This species are fairly deadly in their own right, renowned for preying on smaller dragons, using their smarts and pack hunting to devise strategies against their foes. They use precision strikes to overpower and separate the weak from the larger group, leaving the victim vulnerable. Coupled with their surprising speed and agility, seen to keep up with thunder, they could be mistaken for a strike class dragon. However, they don't rely on stealth to pounce on their prey, but their overwhelming firepower. With plumes of orange fire, these dragons can launch many attacks and not get tired. They even have fire coming from the neck, looking like an exhaust. We don't know what it's used for. It could be a display of some kind, for intimidation or mating reasons, or simply, it could be a way to regulate their immense firepower. They're also quite tough for their size, often withstanding a couple of attacks from other dragons, and resisting high temperatures is a plus as well, as they call the fire realm their home. Typical of Stoker class dragons, flamethrowers are aggressive and territorial, often very willing to go into combat, and they gain extra confidence to expand their territory into other realms with the help of a symbiotic relationship with this next Stoker class dragon. The Sky Torture. Another alpha species. I think this isn't confirmed or anything, this is just pure speculation, but this speculation isn't unfounded, as their strength and power are very comparable to others of this status. Seen to tunnel between the realms, withstanding quite a few dragon blasts before retreating, and even living the fateful encounter with the Death Snake himself. Thanks, no! Don't actually put that in. The dragon can easily grab and fling their victims around, and are surprisingly fast for their size, coupled with their intelligence, enabling them to use the flamethrowers to coordinate the attacks. So what actually makes them Stoker class? Their immense firepower. Instead of one large pillar of flames, this dragon has not 2, not 3, but 4 streams launching from their mouth. However, it does make it quite inaccurate, but it does effectively torch the place. And we're not here criticizing its accuracy, we're here to see whether or not it's Stoker. And yeah. If they are put into icy water, they are unable to breathe fire for a while, perhaps linking their firepower to their internal heat, supported by the environment they live in. Liking to keep warm, with magma-proof scales and preferred living in the fire realm, these dragons can easily withstand intense heat, and probably wouldn't pass up the opportunity to chill in lava, but we don't really see this. Furthermore, their attitude reflects the class placement, highly aggressive and territorial. We've seen them attempting to expand their influence into other realms, but we've only seen one individual, perhaps liking a relatively solitary lifestyle, and only having minions to do its bidding. Because of all this, I believe the Sky Torture very much suits the Stoker class. I'm going to cut to the chase for this next dragon. The Singetail. It's quite clear why this dragon is Stoker class, as it has fire coming out of every orifice, its mouth, legs, and tail. This dragon also uses its firepower like a gobsucker. BAM! And it's gone. Complementing this, their eye movements are like chameleons, moving independently, allowing them to use 360 degrees vision. This helps easily target opponents and choose where to fire from, with little movement. These dragons also use fire as communication. Setting fire to an island indicates a distress signal calling for backup. And in fight, they're quite a formidable opponent, often withstanding fire shots, managing to engage in fights with multiple targets, and fly long distances with little signs of exhaustion. With 4 sets of wings, they are quite maneuverable, able to dodge some attacks. So yeah, this is a very combative dragon, with much of its power deriving from its mass firepower, overwhelming their enemies. Because of this, they're quite cocky dragons, being quite aggressive and /or willing for a fight. All of this makes them very clearly Stoker. Lastly, really, I thought there would be more, is the Typhoomerang. This large dragon can use its fire in multiple ways. The initial breath is like a fire tornado, the flame wraps around the enemy encasing them within a fiery cocoon, being quite large and long-reaching in scale, with the fire spreading far and wide comparing to other dragons. I have to admit, it's probably not the best to target an opponent with, because it could just fly through the middle. But this dragon has a lot more up its sleeve. Wing, fire, They can spin around in one spot and circle you in a fire trap, leaving a very iconic scorch mark. Also, they can emit sparks while spinning around. This also does burn, and perhaps could be a bit more of a primitive version of their ultimate firepower, or perhaps a slightly easier version to use. Also, they can circle around in a flame, combining their speed and firepower, which is insane! So, other than the firepower, which pretty much cements this dragon into their class, what other similarities do they have? Well, being aggressive and great in combat, because these large dragons are very, very strong. Waltzing through forests, knocking over trees, flying at great speeds and distances, have razor sharp wings. Oh, hang on, I think I'm reading the Timberjack. No, this is the Typhoon. They can endure many shots and take impressive hits, or whatever this is. Despite being the size they are surprisingly maneuverable as well. And coupled with their quick to temper attitudes, I really would not want to mess with this dragon. And that's not all. They also can create massive wing blasts from their gigantic wings, like another Stoker class dragon we know. So yeah, being a dragon with these abilities, as well as its hot-headedness and protective nature, these dragons are quite clearly Stoker class. We didn't start the fire. This next category can be described as, I guess, a Stoker, because there's no other reasons for being in any other classes. Their common similarity of being able to produce fire is a common enough thread apparently to warrant this classification, or it's a lukewarm reason being in the Stoker class. Pun very much intended. Like the Flame Whipper, just by the skin of its detachable tail, it fits into the Stoker class, as its other unique abilities are more classless, and it has a slightly higher amount of fire compared to other dragons. With their fire being described as a swirling explosions, they can launch a volley of them that can stun and poison their foes, using its stretchable tongue to help aim the attack. Additionally, their attitudes reflect the class placement, being quite aggressive and territorial, living in packs, protecting their young, but their more iconic abilities is quite interesting to figure out. I could see an argument for mystery, especially with their detachable tail, luring in enemy dragons which, when close, releases a paralysing mist, similar to the methods like the Sweet Death and the Snaptrapper, but this seems to be more of a last resort type of strategy, rather than its primary one. Being gecko-like and climbing along walls with a very stretchy tongue is weird for a dragon in this world, but not the most weird. Like geckos, they are still reptiles. How it uses its tongue is a Stoker-like thing to do, so I guess its best spot, despite not being the most fiery destructive dragon in this list, is the Stoker class. Next is the quite mysterious dragon, the Silver Phantom. This dragon has a lot of mentions about it being elusive, or not much is known about it, which could make it fit into the mystery class, but I think it still suits the Stoker, as what we do know about this dragon, it fits into the classification. The fire it breathes are blue flames, which can go well into the temperatures of 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit. Oh, that's the fool's measurement. 1,927 degrees Celsius. Which, relatively speaking, isn't actually quite hot compared to some other dragons' firepower. But hey, the flames being blue in itself is quite unique, surprisingly. This dragon flies at high speeds across the dark clouds, keeping their distance from Vikings as they don't like their company. So the reason why these dragons are deemed as mysterious is due to them not being around much, which is reflective of how little there are in the Reiserberg. One of the species, one elusive, and one premium. It could be like the Nightfury situation. They are rare dragons and like to stay away, which still branded the Nightfury as a Strike class dragon. So this dragon is just about Stoker from its fire, although I suspect if we ever get more information about them, there could be stronger evidence for this classification. So one of the very few dragons that are dual classes, the Hobgobbler. Yes, like their breeding habits, they're multiplying into all these classes. So I'm going to split this into two segments. The last bit I'm going to talk about why it's in the mystery class, but for now I'm going to explain why it's in the Stoker class. Only by the thinnest of threads, as in School of Dragons it's described to have an incredible firepower, and with a lot of them in a pack I can see an opponent easily getting overwhelmed. Their fire is a flammable drool, similar in function to the monstrous nightmare gel, so I could see it using it in interesting ways, like if it washes itself it could set itself alight, which would be very Stoker, but I don't think there is any mentions of this anywhere, although it does like to lick his eyes a lot. Can I set his eyeballs alight? Ah! You're a demon! I find myself in a weird situation. Like, I would have just put this into the Nox section of the video, but the class I would have suggested it belonging in already is in it. So adding on the extra Stoker class, I don't see any harm in doing that.
The Hot Scholar fits into the mystery class in a lukewarm way, and it doesn't really fit into any other arbitrary categories or sets, so I'm putting it into the miscellaneous section. Honestly, the biggest mystery about these dragons is that we don't really know too much about them, although Gobber is convinced they are a bad omen. Right, into the fear class you go. Perhaps it's due to their feeding frenzy that can eat through almost anything, stripping a wooden deck into seconds. Coupled with their impressive draw strength, their ability to chew is unprecedented. I guess that's the mystery part. How do they eat through anything? They breed like rabbits. Not really mysterious. They can just reproduce fast, and judging how they behave, going into a bit of speculation. They kind of look like they are scouts to look for potential homes for their increasing population. Hence why some just appear from nowhere, and then when you look back there's just more. And on that note, they are very stealthy, surprising Gobber many times. With them just appearing, their mischievous personality. It's like they could just teleport, but I imagine they're really quite fast and have impressive stamina, especially if they flew from Berg to Newberg. Unless they just hitch a ride onto other dragons, which makes more sense to be honest. But that's the thing that keeps them into the mystery class, alongside their weird eating habits.
In both ways, they're kind of mysterious, they're also kind of a bit stokery, so I guess that works out. Last in this category is the Terrible Terror.
It's like the size of my...
This dragon doesn't do anything unique with its fire, nor have an extremely overwhelming one, but this one fits into the Stoker class because this little guy is trying. He's trying so hard. They seem to be quite hot-headed, ready to take action no matter the size of the enemy, dragons or Vikings. They even have a response to fire first and ask questions later, as every time a dragon hunter stuns the dragon, it just fires. They supposedly have accurate flame-throwing abilities, and do have a large amount of fire relative to their size. Coupled with them living in packs, they could be pretty dangerous if you're not paying attention. Being small in nature lends them to being quite sneaky and speedy, easily navigating through small gaps in buildings or caves for shelter or for hunting. They also have very strong jaws with sharp teeth, which isn't evidence for their placement, but it's interesting to witness. And other than their singing, which is adorable, and use in the Terra Mail service, these dragons are just here as their attitude makes them Stoker. And the last category, the not Stoker class. Yep, these dragons either have no abilities that are like other Stoker classes, have more abilities that are more similar to other classes, or straight up, why are they in this class? I mean, I guess they're here because they have nowhere else to go. An example of this is the Hobble Grunt. Its more iconic ability isn't really Stoker, it's a little bit classless, but an interpretation could also be some other classes. You'll see what I mean. First, let's look at the firepower, a very important thing for a Stoker class dragon, a normal orange flame. On Dragonpedia, it says it's ethane expectorant. Is that how you say that? This does burn at a high temperature at 1960 degrees Celsius, but again, this isn't the strongest evidence for Stoker. And that's it with their fire. They do also have a detective frill, picking up subtle shifts in temperature, biometric pressure, and the emotional states of nearby Vikings or dragons, which is kind of a mix of both Tracker and Stoker class. The picking up temperature is Stokerish, but everything else? Yeah. As a result, they are quite sensitive dragons, and seem to be quite timid. However, they do have a dangerous side. Their fins can affect the moods of other dragons around them. I imagine this works as an early warning system, especially as these dragons can detect things quicker than others, making them considered lucky as they can predict good and bad things a split second before they happen. And then they could change the colours of their scales, which can quickly tell the pack about the situation. Like yellow means happy or content, purple when they are curious, blue when they are sad or grieving, and red when they are angry. This does have similarities to the Changewing, which is why this dragon is in the mystery class, but the usage of this and its detecting abilities is why I think this dragon should be Tracker class instead. Next are a couple of interesting dragons, the Shadowwings. Behind the scenes they are considered the same species, yet their description suggests they are not, with both type of dragons working together. As well as in the games they are considered different, so I'm going to go with that, but they are closely related and it's a point for contention coming up. Let's start with the small Shadowwings. And why I don't think they should be Stoker. Other than their extremely high shot limit, their actions, fire, and other abilities scream other classes. They have an explosive molten lava, which can be ignited immediately or have a delay explosion, which, to be fair, is quite a unique application of the fire, but molten lava is such a bolder thing to have. Well, let's look at other things. These dragons are incredibly smart, using a fake injury to lure unsuspecting Vikings and overwhelm Hiccup and Toothless throughout the episode. Although Hiccup was sleep deprived and wasn't on his top form, they latch onto their enemies, very indicative of the highly predatory dragons, the Deathgrippers. Their overall speed, maneuverability, and dive bombing tactics is very much like those in the Strike class, the class of the top predators of the dragon world. Considering these dragons were hunting Vikings, Hiccup, and Toothless in the episode, it's clear that these guys are at the top of the food chain, and they aren't Stoker, but Strike instead. So, what about its larger cousin? Should they be Strike? No. These guys are bigger, much slower, and less maneuverable than their counterparts. I do have to admit, I can't see why they are both being put into Stoker class, as they do have that shared similarity, and if they're considered the same species, having these guys strike doesn't make sense. But we're going with the two different species theory. What class should the last shadows go in? Unfortunately, they're kind of classless. The main thing it has is the formation they do with the other dragons, which proves its intelligence, but meh, doesn't really mean much else. They have a deafening roar, disorientating other dragons and calling for aid of the smaller ones, but that ability is seen throughout the other classes, like the Scream of Death in Boulder, Flightmare in Mystery, and Thunderdrum in Tidal. The firepower. The only firepower we see is in Riserberg. They shoot fireballs, which can only be assumed to be like the small shadows. So there are some like the Smog Bomber who could create bellows of smoke hiding the small shadows when launching the barrage of lava balls, and that's it. They have large nostrils, they're very strong, holding those dragons on their wings, and stocky, like tracker classes, but nothing is mentioned about their scenting abilities. Although every time that Hiccup and Toothless were airborne, the dragons seemed to easily track them down.
Do we have another Buffalord all over again?
We could stick them in Mystery with the same excuse for that dragon, but it doesn't give us much closure. So perhaps compromising with these two dragons, highlighting their connection and keeping them in Stoker would be best. They're aggressive like Stoker classes, they're fairly predatory,
but this dragon has no fire!
Ah! I don't know. Whatever it is, it's not Stoker. This is an odd little fellow, the Rumblehorn. This dragon is Stoker class because, yes. But to be fair, their firepower is interesting. From its horn, a small stream of fire can be released. It can also shoot purple bubbles from it, which can explode in a ball of fire. And when grouped up, they can combine it together to create one large explosion, which, granted, that is a lot of fire, but it's also a very unique ability. No other dragons have bubbles as firepower, so I think it's more fitting of the mystery class placement. Likewise with its other aspects. Being based on a unicorn, there is that mythological status around them, in addition to their big unicorn-like horn on their head, and they can produce spikes all around their body, which is more like a shark class thing. They do also have a disorientating scream, immobilizing enemies and calling for assistance, as they can hang out on their own or live in a big pack to swarm the opponent. And sure, the last one is more of a classless ability, but their personality, I would say, is not so much Stoker. They're quite cunning, using their friendly appearance to their advantage, and they're very mischievous when it comes for looking for food. But if you threaten them, they can become quite aggressive, summoning friends to help out. I think this comes from them being small. They're quite easily pushed around and targeted from those who are larger than them. So yeah, not much is Stoker, and I believe they fit into the mystery class just that bit more. Next we're going to talk about is the Night Terror. Why are these Stoker class? Seriously, they have no abilities relating them to fire. Not even their known subspecies, the Fire Terrors. The one thing they do have is this weird sucking fire ability, but that's it. They're not even hot-headed or overly aggressive. When the riders first discovered these dragons, they quickly trained them, and with the other groups they meet, they quickly get along. But I mean, the mishap with the Fire Terrors is just over the egg, and Fishlegs very quickly gained their trust, so much so that they prevented him from leaving in the episode. Well, let's look at their fire anyway. The individuals have a small fire stream, or fireballs. A regular fire. Okay. On the Dragonpedia, apparently it's stated that they can combine it into one giant fireball when in a flock, which is sick, and would be great evidence for the Stoker class position, but I can't fact check it because it's been lost. It wasn't archived on the Wayback Machine. And I checked the other places like the books, nothing. It just keeps on going on about their flocking ability, which when is commanded by the alpha of the pack, they will position themselves when flying to look like a larger dragon, to scare away the predatory dragons. It's cool, but it isn't very Stoker-like. The closest thing I can think of is Mystery, but this isn't a very mysterious ability, and there's already so many dragons in that class, so... What do you guys think? Ah! Oh my gosh, we're still going. There's so many more after this. Why are there so many? That's not Stoker. The Threadtail. Once again, it's a dragon with little fire, and its known ability is not Stoker. It has a normal fire glow, which is like many other dragons from many other classes in that scene. It's sometimes shown to have a green fire, as well as or a mist? I'm not too sure. It's not officially stated, but I just have to say this. This dragon has the saddest existence. It secretes poison from its skin, which makes it itch. Pretty much the whole existence is them trying all they can to relieve it. Foliander spends most days desperately trying to use the bushes to relieve the constant itching. Sunsoak uses the coarse sand and cold water to relieve his itching. Duskgust soars through the evening clouds. His lilac hide blends in with the purple sky. The cold wind eases his itching. Overchill has discovered a solution. As long as he stays relaxed, he won't secrete the poison. As funny as all this is, it is used as a defensive measure, as if you touch it, it could cause the victim to experience painful convulsions. It also smells like marzipan, and that's all there is to it. Yeah, this dragon is not Stoker, and very similar to the Slitherwing, so I guess putting it in the same class as that dragon makes sense. Yeah, I have no idea why this dragon is in the Stoker class. The Magma Breather. This is the essence of a Polar class dragon. Big stocky body with tiny wings, kinda a peaceful guy wallowing in his own magma, but has a short temper if disturbed, spews out a lot of magma, has rocky plate structures on its back, and consumes volcanic rocks. Every characteristic of the Boulder class is in this dragon, so arguably, this is the most Boulder class dragon there is! Yeah, this is so Stoker class! Perhaps I've misinterpreted something, so let's break this guy down a little. Its firepower is magma, and this dragon spews out a massive amount. Enough to fill in this entire cavern. They also need to keep themselves warm. They do this by bathing in the lava, which could aid in the melting of the rocks in their stomach to produce said firepower. But the dragon does need to stay warm, as it would go into a state of hypothermia and then freeze to death. Which, sure, that's fairly Stoker. There's been cases of Stoker dragons getting ill and losing their firepower, and some prefer to live in hot environments. These guys have shown medium strength, carrying humans on its back and launching D'Angelo from its tail. There hasn't really been references to its toughness, which I guess is another point in maybe slightly less bouldery. They are short-tempered, but I do think that is more of a Boulder class trait. Stokers tend to be aggressive and territorial straight away, and these guys don't mind the company unless you disturb them. They can hover in place like a Gronkle, and are surprisingly fast runners on land as well. Which again, but to be honest, what seals the deal? In the episode Welcome to the Wonderful World of Dragons, Tom and June lure the Magma Breather from the Fire Realm with volcanic rocks. So, it's a rock eater, thus it should definitely be Boulder class. And the last one from the 9 realms. The Snowtail. This is the only class placement that actually annoys me. The defining characteristic of a Stoker class is fire, and this dragon has none. It breathes ice! Some could argue that it's more about the mass of firepower, or how it's utilised to overwhelm their prey. But they are the prey, they are weak, they are small things for others to gobble up. The firepower is very basic, breath style, like many other dragons, but instead they have actual fire, instead of just chilly water vapor. So why is it Stoker class? Okay, crash out over with. So it's not Stoker class. Then which could it be? Well, let's look at its other abilities and characteristics. Okay, they're speedy when running. They're resistant to the cold temperatures, which makes sense. They live in an icy region. They're sociable. They can climb up trees. Oh gosh, I have nothing here. Well, we can strike a few more classes off the list. No pun intended. Mystery, Boulder, Tidal, Tracker, and of course, Stryke, because those type of adaptations have nothing in relation to these classes, leaving us with just Sharp. And I guess that's going to have to do. There are a bunch of dragons that are sharp because they don't have much else going for them, and these guys have been shown to use their nasal horn in a fight, and having sharp enough talons to climb icy surfaces is the best we're going to get. Though D'Angelo did state this.
Where are you putting those terrors?
I'm thinking next to your snowtails. They're cousins, so they should get along.
Really? Are you sure about that, buddy? They have nothing in common. Snowtails are more like Nadders than they are terrors. I think you should stick to medical science and not evolutionary science. But this brings me on to the last, more jokey, quote-unquote, dragon, chicken. Yeah, in Riserberg, the chickens are technically under Stoker class. I thought the placeholder / default would have been the mystery, and I think at some point in the past it probably was, but at the time of recording it's under Stoker, so we're just going to go with that. Though I do think it should be mystery, mainly because one of their most prominent characteristics is their relation with Rough and Tough's pranks. Chilean was confused as an ice sculpture, so Tough could let his pet eat with him. I think there was a no chickens allowed rule with that. Cockatrice was said to be an unholy offspring of a chicken and lichen wing, but Tough just feeds it glowing algae. Lucky Plucky was convinced to be a really lucky chicken to, I guess, save her from the slaughter, as she was deemed special by Tough. Thorfest Hen was painted in honour of Loki, the god of pranks, and it does like to brood on dragon's eggs. And lastly, Gulklumper, which Rough and Tough wasn't actually involved in, but it was believed that the chicken laid golden eggs. But in reality, it was a lie, told by the egg sellers. But it got its golden shine from the result of having a very picky diet. So a mixture of unusual effects from various diets, and with their involvement, willing or otherwise, with pranks and mischievous nature, I guess lends them to be a mystery class, if we had to class them. Plus, what are they covered in? Something called feathers? What's that red thing? The comb and the wattles? And what's with its mouth? It's a weird, sharp, pokey object. That's not very dragon-like. Ah!
Our time is short, chicken. Come, our fate awaits.
The Boulder class. These dragons are tough and are associated with the earth. They can eat rocks or other minerals, which can be melted into their stomachs and regurgitated as a lava blast. They often have small wings with large rounded bodies. Despite this, they are able to keep up with most other dragons, and they aren't picky eaters. So the last class, the Boulder class. This is going to be fun. Today we're going to be looking at these specific set of dragons to see whether or not they are Boulder or not. First, we're looking at the Rock Eaters. Dragons in this category are predominantly classed as Boulder because they eat rocks or other minerals, which either produces their firepower or is just a nice snack. Starting with the face of the Boulder class, the Gronkle. These dragons love to eat many types of rocks, consuming them and regurgitating them as a lava blast. Their stomachs contain lava, which melts the rocks they eat, which is how they are able to produce their firepower. However, they do actually have a couple of types of fire. One is just spitting the rock straight away with the heptane and oxygen to make a fiery shot. This can be launched in quick succession after gathering the rocks. Or a more powerful but slower is the lava spew, needing to actually consume the rocks and wait for them to be melted down. Outside of their firepower, this ability is very useful, as this is how Vikings make Gronkle Iron and other combinations of minerals for various metals, like the time they had to combine Gronkle Iron and Deathsong Amber to plug up the holes in the ground to stop the volcano erupting. I feel like that would just make more pressure. Anyway, and of course, in order to eat the rocks, they need to have powerful jaws. Moving on, there's little known about this ability, but they can shoot off their bumps along their body. Because we don't see this, I imagine it can leave the dragon quite vulnerable, as it strips all their armor off, and it could hurt the animal. I can see it being used as a last resort, especially if it's surrounded, but this ability wouldn't really be necessary, as they have lots of other methods for combat. They are quite notably strong and have tough exteriors. Dagger and Shattermaster were good examples of how durable these dragons are, as the amount of times they just crash into boats, even ones aligned with metal, and he just shrugged it off as if it was nothing. Their tails have been used multiple times to bludgeon enemies and poke holes through ships. I told you these two are nuts! But these dragons are quite sociable. You usually would have to deal with a few of these at one time, but that's more of a social strength. Adding on to their physical toughness though, they have an immunity to dragon root and an extra resistance to heat, as they are one of the few dragons that can navigate through a lavary landscape. Their stature is seen as typical of dragons in the Boulder class. Rounded, thick hides and small wings, which does make them the slowest out of all the dragons, but hard to deal with physically. Despite this, they do have some very interesting ways around their limitations. Because their movements are like bumblebees, or even hummingbirds, they have a unique ability to hover and move in any direction from one spot, helping them easily move through their surroundings like small caves. They can circle up and drop and steady themselves quickly, making them some of the fastest dragons to descend. And despite their slow speeds whilst flying, this doesn't equate to them running on land, as they are surprisingly fast. Gronkles are seen as easy to train and lovable once you get to know them, but if you upset them, they can have a very nasty attitude, so be careful. Because of all these factors, I believe Gronkles are a prime example of what Boulder Class dragons are, and a good reference point for the upcoming dragons in this video. Here we have the larger, lazier cousin of the Gronkle, the Hotburple. Known as the garbage eaters of the dragon world, this species scoops up any rocks, metal and scrap lying around. For this job they have incredible draw strength, even having the ability to crush dragon-proof metal bars. Their firepower is identical to before, spitting the rocks and metal back out into balls of molten lava. They have defensive armor along their bodies, and being incredibly strong knocking down enemies, these dragons do possess quite a lot of strength, especially as they're known to easily escape from their pens. These guys do have a dangerous side, especially if you upset them, as they have a fearsome furiosity. Apparently they have striking parallels with that of a Nightfury.
I feel like I'm always asking you this question, but... Wake up! Wake up!
As you can see, the thing that holds them back is their sleeping habits, as it could be tricky to train these creatures just due to them not being awake long enough. Like Gronkles, these little guys have small wings and possess round, tough bods, not being known for their speed in flight. But hey, it did pretty well keeping up the Skull Crusher, so who am I to judge? I think it's quite clear that these guys are bolder.
Oh, give me a cuddle, Grumpy!
So, from Burke's Forges to Burke's Builders, the Shovel Helm. These dragons are most well known for being incredibly effective at assisting Vikings in building structures. Is that how Burke grew so quickly? All on the backs of the Shovel Helms? Oh. Having a pointed chin, they use it to shovel out dirt, perfect for Burke's construction. There's even an individual called Damsel, who has a strange affinity with the water, who helps with seaside construction. Like other boulder classes, they are stocky and defensive, and prefer staying back to assess the situation before going in. They too like to eat rocks, although this isn't used for their firepower, as it's just a generic stream of fire, but perhaps it's just an extra nutrients thing, as these guys are hard workers and definitely need it. They always seem to be getting involved, and go out their way to help others, so as these dragons have some of the highest strength out of all dragons, I believe these guys are defo boulder class. The Catastrophic Quaken. These guys are cool and very clearly boulder, especially as they could basically turn into one, but I'm going to explain them nevertheless. These chads also eat rocks and minerals, but it isn't confirmed that they use it for their firepower, or can they just shoot magma slobber anyway? Either way, it doesn't really matter. They have split jaws as well, which is very interesting. Perhaps it helps them chew through some of the toughest rocks. Quakers are incredibly tough, having some of the thickest hides, either withstanding dragon blasts or smashing into rocks, cliffs, gold, or other earthly things. They were even able to smash through solid marble, where it was resisted by any other attempts from the dragon riders. These dragons are great for mining, as they can circle up into balls and can smash into the ground for great defensive power, creating shockwaves that can knock down dragons from the sky. These dragons are aggressive, as they are territorial and are solitary. However, this is a little misnomer, as they can and do have interspecies relationships with Gronkles. The Quakens crack the larger rocks, and the Gronkles eat up the pebbles. Once thought as a difficult dragon to train, they like to communicate through vibrations, which is the key method to get their attention and to respond to you. I can imagine this is how they communicate with others of the species across the island, as their behaviour of attacking and hunting is through smacking the earth. So definitely boulder class. So what about the volcanic dragon, the Eruptodon? This one's another one that are quite like the other boulder classes, but turned up to 11. Instead of rocks, these dragons like to eat molten lava in active volcanoes. As a result of this, they have increased resistance to the extreme heat. Oh, look at it having a lava bath, it's so cute. So much so that the eggs need to be engulfed into lava to live. It's clear just from the look of them that they are boulder, as well as being round, very tough and having stone-like scales. They can tunnel through mountains of dormant volcanoes to make them erupt if they are starving. The dragon emits enough body heat to boil water around them, and some are even immune to radioactive rocks. And of course, being those of the boulder class, they are very strong, lifting heavy things, like that diving bell. Oh, and how can I forget about their firepower? They spit out molten balls of lava from their diet, cooling down into hot rocks. So with all these abilities, it's clear that these are boulder classes, with some Stoker in there, which is interesting. Next is the Fault Ripper, which I initially decided to put in the not section of the boulder class video, as the primary ability is Burrowing, which isn't inherently boulder, and I didn't think it has much else that fit into that class. But I did end up moving it because in the booklet from the Legends of the Nine Realms game, called A New Age, it is revealed that these fellas do in fact feed on a variety of rocks, ores and minerals found throughout the environment of the hidden world, which is a very distinctive boulder class characteristic. So congratulations, Fault Ripper, you just made it in. But I must say, how it burrows, it is quite fascinating. The dragon encircles itself with its wings, which have sharp spikes at the end, and spin around to form a drill head. I think that's super creative, and when the dragon does tunnel in the earth, it can cause earthquakes, which could range from impressive or kind of average, only if we deem this species as alpha or not. In Roseburg, there is a collection where you can obtain the other 9 realm dragons, however none of them have described loyalties to the Fault Ripper. But in the episode The Sky Torture, to chase said Sky Torture out of the Crystal Realm, the Fault Ripper brought a bunch of Crystal Realm dragons, ordering them to fire and chase the intruder away. Meaning, yeah, I could say this is an alpha species, which leads to their strength and endurance. It is slightly weaker than its alpha contemporaries, but it is stronger than most other dragons, as in the fight with the Dragon Club, it withstood a lot of attacks before finally going down. I would say their speed is average for a dragon, though much faster than the typical boulder, especially when it drills up. It can increase in velocity, and when coupled with its fire, it could really leave a big impact. It does have a purple flame, which isn't like other boulder classes, as they tend to have more magma-based fire. These dragons are also blind, which matches their environment which they thrive in, deep underground. And judging by their large ear holes, with the sensitivity to the sound attack from feathers, these dragons could rely heavily on the sound to navigate, either hearing the vibrations in the ground, or simply another dragon that can echolocate. Unfortunately, this area isn't really expanded upon too much, which could help solidify the habitat and behavioural patterns this dragon exhibits. Speaking of, they are one of the rare boulder class dragons that are aggressive and territorial, attacking anything within its environment. Although this particular dragon could have been upset. Its home was interrupted by the meteorite forming the fissure and humans settling in the area for research. We do see another side of this animal. As Tom apologises for attacking it, it seems to forgive and help aid in the protection of the realm from the evasive Sky Torture. Perhaps this dragon needs a strong display of trust and peacefulness to be sure you won't disturb its home. The other Fault Ripper in the game does kick a bunch of gem breakers out of their nest for its own, so this dragon could be quite solitary and selfish, especially when establishing a territory. So this dragon is quite a mixed bag, but it having quite a significant characteristic in the boulder class just about allows it to keep its placement. Last in this category is the Snufflefang. It's said that these dragons have diamond-sharp teeth, loving to gnaw on geodes the same way dogs are to bones. According to the World of Dragons, their fire contains flecked crystals, suggesting that the geodes they eat could form their fire, or is just an addition to it. Imagine a flame, but then you get hit with thousands of tiny shards at the same time. Ouch. Also, they have a mace at the end of their tail, full of spikes, and horns on their face. So if you manage to avoid their fire, you'll need to contend with them as well. Much like other dragons of the boulder class, they have a similar stocky structure and great strength, often forgetting that whilst playing with other dragons. So despite being more active and lively compared to their boulder counterparts, they are clearly boulder class dragons. Second, we're looking at the rock-likes. Dragons in this category, despite not eating rocks, have rocky or earthly features as a part of their body or behaviours, like the Sentinel Dragons. First appearing on Vanaheim, with their main job to protect and maintain the grave sites of the dragons, or guard the alphas. These dragons are like bodyguards, and thus needs to be some of the toughest dragons in existence. Their stone-like scales provide excellent protection against many attacks, and if they do get hurt, they could be restored through heat, which is quite unique. This could explain why they remain motionless a lot of the time, primarily during the day, as presumably that's how they gather energy, absorbing the heat of the sun. though they still eat either the fruit on the island or fish seen in Rise of Berk and School of Dragons. So perhaps it's more of a boost or provide healing. Either way, it's an ability that's kind of classless, as well as everything else they have. Their main attack is gusts of wings to push back dragons, or sonic screeches, utilising the common weakness of sound, disorientating dragons. They do possess a firepower, but it's just a normal stream of fire. The only other thing interesting about them is they are blind, and they have heightened senses in sound and smell. Sentinel structures aren't like those of other boulder classes, being more slender and having larger wings, but I believe they still suit the class they're in from their toughness, appearance, and affinity with other boulder classes, as Meatlug was the one who knew how to restore the Sentinels in the first place. Next is one of my favourite dragons, the Crimson Gorgutter. These dragons are some of the largest land-based creatures, covered in rocky osteoderms, making them very tough for most dragons to compete with. Coupled with some of their physical features, they could cause lots of destruction, but they are kind giants, so it would tend to be an accident. So yeah, at the tip of their tail is an axe-shaped feature, which could be used as an offensive tool. We don't know if they use it like sharp class dragons to cut down objects, but I can see that as a possibility. And one of the most prominent attributes is their metallic moose-like antlers, used to smash through objects when needed, or cover their antlers in molten lava before attacking. We don't know if they eat minerals, so the antlers could either resemble metal or form through the help of their diet. Speaking of, these are some of the few dragons that doesn't ingest rocks to spit it back out as fire, but it can still produce a molten lava ball firepower, so mechanically it could be similar, it's just missing some extra fuel, which could also be the reason why it tends to smash through objects than fire, because we don't see it once throughout the movie. And lastly, they have an ear-splitting call, which is classless, but I think it's still worth mentioning. These dragons are so cool, and although they are slightly different from the standard boulder class, they have a few key features that make them belong in that class. Here we have the very odd dragon, a Thunderpede. This boulder class dragon doesn't have any rocky or earthly features on it. There are some individuals, but its most known ability and behaviour can only be described as fairly boulder. Using their two strong forearms, they can pulverize any objects in front of them, especially boulders. This proves its strength is equal to its boulder class peers, with an emphasis of their combat prowess. A Thunderpede called Stonewall was able to take on an entire fleet of dragon hunters all on her own. Deserved, as they were very homophobic. Golium's description says they can hit the ground and any hunters nearby would stumble to the ground. She also needs to stay away from Berkian houses. If shovel helms are the builders of Berk, then these guys are the bulldozers. But as cool as this is, it never goes into why they pulverize rocks. Quakens do it for their meal, but these guys do it to prepare for fights. They're like Rocky of the Dragon world. But why they want to fight is never delved into. So what else contributes to their boulderiness? Well, they have soft belly scales, suggesting their other ones are much tougher. They are a little bit longer, but still rounded in nature, with teeny tiny wings, which rival the size of the Gronkles. And apparently these are quite social creatures. They follow a social hierarchy, and they communicate using their forelegs to form gestures or rhythmic stomps to convey emotion. Quite similar to the theories I had about the catastrophic Quaken. Their flame is just a generic fireball. They are hot enough to melt rocks, so perhaps it's more lava based like other boulder classes, but once again this dragon doesn't consume rocks in order to produce it. Although going back to what I said at the start, there are some individuals who do look very earthy, with stone-like scales and lava going through them. Though there is a rainbow one as well. He attacks with a full spectrum of smashing power. Didn't know I could use my autism as a smashing power, but here we are. But from the evidence I just provided, this species is boulder class. Though just about. Lastly, we're tackling this very peculiar dragon, the Grunsicle. Instead of rocks, this dragon is all about ice. Every relationship these boulder classes have with the earth, the Grunsicle is identical, but it's with frozen water. They are very similar to Grunkles. Stocky, strong, durable, small wings. These dragons are just slightly longer and have more of a tail. They even consume ice to spit it back out, with an extra punch with liquid nitrogen. So, it's just like an anti-Gronkle. And if you want to get technical, naturally occurring ice are technically rocks. if you just stick to the definitions.
Ice is a rock. What the heck else is ice if it's not a rock? I'm on the Wikipedia page. A rock is any naturally occurring solid mass or aggregate of minerals or mineraloid matter. Ice is a rock, as long as it's naturally occurring. The ice in your freezer, not a rock.
Yes, I am sinking this low just to arbitrarily fit this dragon in. Just ignore any other implications this could have on any other dragons. But to be honest, a dragon having an affinity with snow and ice doesn't necessarily mean its tidal class, as Snow Wraith, Shivertooth and some other individuals of Raincutters and Windgnashers exist. But of course, because this dragon lives on icebergs and icy caves, it would have cold resistances. Though a strong argument for it being in tidal is that it does like to hang out in water. However, counter-argument, there are quite a few individuals and other types of Gronsicles where you can see more of an earthly undertone to them. It looks like the ice aesthetic is more on top, and possibly their actual skin or scales are more earth-like, very similar to other boulder classes we've seen, with the extra layer of ice acting as a thermal layer, or just help with camouflage. With this theory being potentially confirmed in the description of an individual called Lovesome Crackle, sometimes he can keep them in, and they even crack his cold outer shell. However, this also could be seen as a metaphor because this is just a love Gronsicle. But I'm fairly confident within this, and thus it fits into this category of rock likes, and that means I think it's boulder class. Though just about. It could be a good contender for a dual class. And thirdly, the last category, the not boulder class dragons. The dragons coming up either have features that aren't like other boulder classes, or abilities more like those in other classes. For example, the Whispering Death. This one is one of the OG Boulder class dragons, and was predominantly put into that class because of its burrowing ability. However, over time, burrowing, though still common in Boulder class, isn't mutually exclusive, as many other dragons from many other classes have this. So now the Whispering Death would need a little bit extra to remain in Boulder, and I don't think it has one. First, let's look at this thing. Ah! Sorry, that's my Spotify rap this year. There we are. I think these dragons are more sharp class than anything else. Look how pointy this thing is. They can use their tail to slice things. They use a spine shot like the deadly Nadder, though that's not sharp anymore. And the rows and rows of rotating teeth. That's how it tunnels, by the way, grinding the earth to dust to slither through. They don't consume any of it for their firepower, as it's just rings of flames. Albeit cool, but not like those of other boulder classes. To be fair though, these dragons do love being underground, and surface rarely due to their sensitivity to the light, but they just don't possess earthly features, or aren't exceptionally tougher than other dragons. Don't get me wrong, they can endure quite a lot of stuff, but comparatively speaking to other boulder classes, meh. They aren't strong either, with quite a few examples of them being flung around. The Whispering Death is so close to being boulder. If it was able to spit rocks back out, or the spines are more rock or metal like, then I'll definitely say yeah. With the design being the only thing outside the boulder norm, with it being long, spiky and slithery. But because it hasn't got any of those, it's hard to be really confident in its placement. Though if the Whispering Death should be sharp, then what about the Screaming Death? The once in every 100 years mutation. This alpha dragon is harder as it has more going for it, with less extremity in the sharp teeth and more emphasis on the toughness. But the Screaming and the Whispering Death should be in the same class, as they're the same species, I think? I don't really know how this mutation things work. There's no real world examples to draw from. It's quite weird. But I would still suggest an argument for sharp class, as it still has the very sharp features and abilities, like the spine shots and the non-boulder-like firepower, though it has a more rapid fire fireball's firepower. I wish I was better at writing. It even has a high shot limit like those of the Stoker class, and one of its old weaknesses, light sensitivity, is gone. However, there's still quite a few boulder things. It still thoroughly enjoys living underground. The tunneling is to its extreme, with the ability to sink entire islands. Other alpha class dragons are able to destroy entire islands, or smash through them, though this comes from more of their size than anything else, and it's not to this level. Additionally, the Screaming Death scales are very, very tough. Hiccup used them as armor against Dragon Hunter arrows. The dragon resists many blasts in the fight with the riders, and it's described that only the boiling water of the Skuldron can penetrate them. They do have a disorientating scream, which is from their namesake, but that ability is classless. They are very intelligent, speedy, and have high stamina, but this doesn't really help define the class placement. It's equally boulder and non-boulder. We need to tie the relationship between the Screaming and the Whispering Death, with, in my opinion, the Whispering Death being slightly more sharp aesthetically, so I guess going along with that makes most sense, making the Fault Ripper the default alpha dragon for the boulder class. And lastly, a dragon that I am much more confident in that it shouldn't be boulder class. This is the Grapple Grounder. There is nothing earthly about them. The closest thing we get is Fierce Piercer, who was assigned to the mining operations, but then was moved to Burke's Guard as she was more adept at combat. This is a common through line with all the dragons in this species. Every description indicates how they like to wrestle and are good at fighting. These dragons have snake-like features, often coiling around their victim and squeezing them. They lurk in the dark crevices to pounce on their prey. You would also need to watch out for their horns and arrow-tipped tail, which could cause a lot of harm. Let's look at their firepower. A light blue pulse ball, like a plasma blast. What? There is variety within these shots. The larger ones take more time to produce, move slower, and are more powerful, whilst the smaller ones are easier to launch, quicker, but less powerful, which is similar in function to the Nightfuries. Though in Rise of Berk they look like more generic fireballs, and in School of Dragons they're a little bit more yellowish. So, to be honest with you, I don't actually really know what its firepower is. Though in School of Dragons it still states that it's a pulse blast, similar to those of the Nightfuries, so I'm just going to go along with that. They are fast and agile, and there is nothing noted about their toughness or strength. Though being great in combat could suggest it could be higher than the average, but that doesn't really mean much, especially for the excuse of them being in Boulder. So if it doesn't belong here, then which class would it go in? I think it should be in Stoker. This mainly stems from their attitudes. They are aggressive and love to fight, which is very common with dragons in that class. Although their fire isn't overly Stoker-like, it's still quite unique and can be interacted with in interesting ways. Like in the How to Train Dragon console game, it can track to their opponents. A tracking fireball, and it contains magnesium gel, which sounds like it has similarities to dragons with the gel-like fire. You know, the ones who are like in the Stoker class. Because of this, at the very least, I don't think the Grapple Grounder is not Boulder class. And they are all the classes explained. Yippee! But before you fully click off, there is going to be another video stitched on at the end. They're not classified dragons explained. I want to take a moment to really thank you for watching this series, as this was the one that sort of made my channel blow up a little bit in the first place and has enabled me to actually take this on as like a full-time job, which is insane to me. It's like a dream come true. And although this series is over, I definitely have other series in mind, even one that's kind of similar to this. Oh, I've got so many plans. It takes so long to create videos. Please be patient. I'm just a one-person army here. Though I should say, I did have help making this video from my friends, Indominus and Zame Reborn. Thank you very much, guys. They know how much I appreciate it. I also want to thank all the voiceover people who participated in this as well. I wanted to try and share some other creators in the How to Train Dragon sphere. I really want to focus on building each other up. Yeah. And the artists in this were amazing and cool. Definitely check them out in the description. Thank you. And now I'm going to leave you with probably my favourite video. I mean, I just love the editing in it so much, and I put so much effort in all the assets. Yeah, enjoy.
The Unclassified Dragons. Some of these dragons have never been named or classified despite appearing in official Dragons media. I'll be focusing on the main ones from the classic era. All the concepts and small references I'm going to put to one side. So today I'll be going through all these dragons to guess what class they should be in, and why some are not.
Not what? They can all have a class.
Yes, funny enough, these dragons have names but no class. And I'm somewhat starting off with a dragon that already breaks the disclaimer, but they have a whole thing to them. The Wing. People still don't know whether it's a real dragon or a Viking legend. Considering we have a whole episode about it in Race to the Edge, and we gain quite a bit of information about it, for now I'm going to be classifying it as if it's real. But I'm not going to pull your leg, it is going in the mystery. It has a lot of mysterious abilities that cannot be explained. Like a werewolf, if it bites its victims, they are doomed to spend the rest of their sorry lives half human, half Wing. We get two appearances of it, a half human, half dragon form, and a full-on dragon. And that's kinda it. The only other mentions is of Tough Nut making up a story about cockatrice being an offspring of a chicken and Lycanwing, but the reality is that he's just feeding it glowing algae. Good, because I would definitely have a few questions. It's still unknown why it was in the Dragon Eye. Is it real? Was it just a legend to protect the lenses? Who knows? But since there's so little information about it, and the information that we do know about it is very mysterious, for now, if it's real, it will go into the mystery class. The other named dragon comes from the Live Spectacular, the Stinger. Surprisingly, the Eggbiter and the Gobsucker got put as Riserberg, but not the Stinger. But if it was put in, what class would it be in? Looking at the body, it has similarities to the Deadly Nadder or Scuttleclaw. The one we see in the show is actually a short wing, meaning it's not fully matured. So the adults could look quite different. But the name being Stinger suggests an appendage, one of the likes that penetrates and injects some sort of chemical into the victim. So Speed Stinger, Triple Strike, or Deathgripper like. At the moment, it's a toss-up between the Sharp or Strike. But wait. Looking at the Stinger more, it doesn't really look like it has a stinger that we're used to knowing. It looks more like a Thagomizer. And to be completely honest, we haven't actually seen the Stinger use its appendage. So it still remains a mystery whether or not it can actually do what it says on the tin. Is that a saying? But considering the name is Stinger, I think it's best to give it the benefit of a doubt. Coupled with it being fast runners and being nippy when it's biting, none of this really adds up to being a strike class, as that's the class of fast maneuverable and have unique abilities to help navigate their surroundings. So I guess sharp class? I mean, it does have sharp body parts. Check. Poisonous projectiles? Well, if you count the stinger on the speed stinger, then sure. Love to be made a fuss of? Well, one of the methods of training them is to scratch them in their sweet spot. It pretty much do be a sharp boy. The next category is a bunch of unnamed dragons from the films. How they remained unnamed and unclassified all this time is beyond me, especially how prominent some of them are. Some of these are some of the most upfront background dragons. Speaking of, I'll start with, that one. They seem to like being in herds, and they do be having large nostrils. And I guess almost every time we see them, they're kind of sniffing stuff. They seem pretty chill, having the same sort of temperament of other tracker classes. Okay, what about the firepower? Well, it's hard to find. The only instance I can see is a long stream, so just a generic firepower. This doesn't really help. Well then, let's look at the body. It looks similar to that of a Windgnasher, but instead of a club, they have a split tail, like the Mudraker. And they also kind of have the face of a Thunderclaw, and there's nothing really much else to it. Honestly, due to how plain they are, and somewhat stocky, every similarity they do have with other dragons are along the lines of tracker class. But what about this one with the two tusks? So just looking at it, it kind of reminds me of a Shovelhound, but without the tusks. It's a fairly rounded big boy. The only unique characteristics I've seen of it is that it's very tough and strong, being the primary ones to lug around heavy machinery for Drago's army. The only other ones we see are Thunderclaws. Okay, what about the firepower? Again, it's another instance as we can't really tell. The best place we can see is in the final moments against the Wildebeest. An orange fireball? Perhaps there's a rock? It looks like there's something there. Okay, anything else? I think they might be a tad bit more aggressive compared to some others, often in front or leading the charge. I mean, it was the first one to approach Hiccup in the Sanctuary, then closely followed by the Shovelhelm. But like a bunch of others in that moment, they did also sniff Hiccup and was mesmerized by his sword for what that's worth. Even though a lot of these traits can be dragon specific rather than species specific. I noticed their lack of presence in like outdoors stuff. The only time we really see them are inside caves, naturally speaking, ignoring the ones enslaved by Drago, the nest being under attack, and the odd one migrating, because they're very unique circumstances. But honestly, I feel like my gut is telling me Boulder. I can see Trucker as well. I really like the idea of the dragon uses its tusks to smash into rocks, to then eat the pebbles to create the firepower. But unfortunately, we don't really ever get any unique characteristics or descriptions with these sort of dragons, so I'm probably going to have to stick for Boulder for now. If it ever gets named or classed, that can change. Although, funny enough, the next one has sort of been named. In a DVD extra, they used the model of this dragon to explain the Raincutter. There could be many explanations for this. This was just a mistake and they used the wrong model. Or this was another variation of the Raincutter, being sexual dimorphism or subspecies, hard to really say. Does the firepower help at all? Again, no. I'm doing so much work for such little payoff. It does have heavily similarities to the Raincutter, and it being fairly spiky as well, I guess. Putting it in the sharp class makes sense. It's like the Raincutter, but without any ties to the rain or water. So Windcutter. Yeah. Nah, that just sounds stupid. The last one out of this set is that one. That one right there. This too has an identical twin in the Prickleboggle. It's just missing like the sails on the tail. So again, theories of either sexual dimorphism or subspecies, if it is one. But anyway, if it's not a Prickleboggle, then what class would it go in? Well, the only reason the Prickleboggle is in the mystery class, confirmed in this post here, is because I'm assuming of the unique firepower. As it's just another basic orange flame, we can't use this as an example. We can't really analyse the behaviour either, as it's very much in the background a lot of the time. It's sort of just sitting there. Just looking at the body alone, this too is really hard to define as well, as it's quite generic looking. No real extreme fire abilities for Stoker, no rounded toughness for Boulder, no overtly large body parts used for tracking, no particularly spiky body parts used for sharpening, nothing mysterious and nothing Stryke. So I'm kind of stumped. Ish. I would still put it in sharp, as horns and claws are something. It's more of a reason compared to some other confirmed sharp class dragons. I guess it's the best we could do with such little information. The next category is dragons in other media, those weird one-offs. And I like to include everything because at this point it's just kind of funny. Like the Berry Dash Dragon. Yes, this thing. It's in the web game Dragon Races, the Dragon Berry Dash. Hence the name I've just given it. It looks like a wyvern version of Small Shadows. Other than that, we see literally no abilities of the dragon. So Stoker class. What? It just looks like a basic fire breather. Yeah, it does have a nasal horn, but so does like 90% of the other dragons. I'm just thinking about that and moving on. To the activity books. Yes, we are sinking to this low. A randomized activity book. This odd looking fellow is there, I guess. A quadruped, green, orange stripes, and 4 spikes on the head, maybe 2 on each side. Sharp. There's nothing much to it, to be honest. It looks like an angular boy with some spiky bits. Enough for sharp class with like no further knowledge. And lastly, oh, an actual thing? I thought this category was just going to be mostly full of jokey ones. But this dragon comes from the Universal Pictures live show in Beijing. I dub it the Beijing Dragon. I know, imaginative. Because we don't know what it's called.
Well, there is a version now in America in the Universal Park in Florida, but it's still called the Wildebeest. But it looks nothing like it, and I kind of want to treat it as a different dragon.
But compared to the 2 prior, I'd say this is as canon as the Stinger, whose contemporaries got into the games. Where does this dragon come from? By the looks of it, it looks like it's based off the concept of the Wildebeest. I know I said I'm not really going to include concepts, but they turned this into like an official dragon, who's actual part of the story. Plus, it looks really cool. And also, technically, it's on Fish Lex's cards in the second movie, so just ignore me ignoring all the ones on Hiccup's map. And the Book of Dragons. I'm thinking of going and talk about them in another video. I can leave stuff in the comments if you really want to know now. But for now, though, let's just stick with this dragon and what class it belongs into. Being based on the Wildebeest concept, and that being a tidal dragon from very early concept, could mean it's also a tidal class. We know it lives in the Arctic places and breathes ice. It acts very aggressive towards Vikings. Looking at the creature to speculate on how it exists, it's like a halfway between Wildebeest and a Smothering Smokebreath in design. With it being fairly large, I mean big enough to fit in with the other tidal classes. I can see the dragon using its tusks to poke through the ice to breathe, or an additional weapon. The hair-like thing on the body helps it keep it warm, and the spikes on the back could be used like how the sea shockers use their spikes, breaking up the ice on the surface. It also has 3 sets of wings, perhaps to help it propel itself in water. Although all this speculation has no real validity behind it. But at the same time, I don't really want to cop out and just stick it into the mystery because we don't really know too much about it. So I guess I'll do this. As polar bears are technically considered marine animals, I'm going to do the same with this dragon and say it's tidal class. My guess is as good as yours. The last category is the not classified dragons. These ones cannot be classified due to such lacking information we cannot define literally anything. For example, these 2 images from the wiki. And FYI, I use the wiki as a branching off point for further information and further research. But to be honest, 9 times out of 10, it is correct. So, commending people who work on it. Thank you. You make my life so much easier. This is one of those times where I tried so hard to look further into it and found almost nothing. This dragon is really confusing. It looks like it has a sail, and what I can make out like a split tail is green and has some sort of a nasal horn. I mean, it fits like the description of a Mudraker perfectly. But on a technical standpoint, this dragon shouldn't really exist. We do see all the models they use for dragons. As in any other shot, you can see all the like copy and pasting they do. And furthermore, this apparent model doesn't exist in the sequel movie.
which again wouldn't make sense because they wouldn't just not include an extra dragon in the vast lineup. I mean, they went to such detail and added a couple of Skrills in. So, what is this? My guess is either two things. Either it's a Snifflehunch with an animation error. Obviously that will happen. We get a couple of bold dragons in these films. These films are obviously not perfect. Although I like to think of it as if they are hurt dragons, like we see in Volker's Sanctuary. Looking at the other Snifflehunches in the scene, due to a motion blur or another reason, it looks like they have sails, but up close they don't actually. Or it's the Windgnasher looking unnamed dragon, explaining the split tail, but the largish sail, the green colour. I did notice in a few of the shots in the scene that in the far distance dragons, it looks like what they do is how they treat it in games and lower the detail / poly count from the models, resulting in the spikes turning into funky looking sails. Mixed with motion blur as well, confuses it a lot. I'm assuming they do this so they could fit even more dragons without completely crashing their computers. And this does not apply to the third movie as it has better technology. So, I guess is they might have missed this dragon and not turned up the poly count for the closer shot, resulting in whatever this is. I do have to admit, I couldn't find where this example was, but I did find a couple more throughout the scenes, but I'm convinced these are pre-established models that we've seen. If it is a new dragon, however, then we cannot see enough detail to define what class it is. The last, but not least, well, I don't know what these are. They are dragons in eggs. People theorize that these are Lightfury's eggs way back when, but they have never been confirmed. Also, look at the frame more, it looks like it's a bunch of different dragons. Some have tail fins, some have chameleon tails, some have forward-facing horns, some have backwards-facing horns. Also, there's a crap ton of them. I don't think this is one species clutch worth. Dragons being quite a communal order, I imagine they all lay their eggs together to keep them safe. And I think they all look similar because they're all in the bioluminescence room. But yeah, so because these are way underdeveloped dragons, we can't see any features to classify. The possibility these are already acknowledged dragons, we can't tell what they are because they are embryos, and this could be many dragon species. I had to talk about them because we do see them visually on screen, but it's impossible to classify. Wait, one more category? You said the last one was the last one. Honestly, I'm just doing this for fun. I'm going to be talking about the concept dragons that are the unofficial ones, some of the weird references in a bunch of media, and the ones on the Hiccups map. I didn't really include them as they're technically not canon, and there's various explanations of why they exist, which again I'll go into detail on in another video. But for now, we're just here to classify stuff, baby! Oh, the previous two were Tracker, Mystery, and Strike, for the sake of consistency for the dumb segment of this video. Quickfire round. Boulder, Boulder, Stoker, Tracker, Stoker, Tidal, Sharp. Oi! Stoker, Mystery, Tracker, 3 more titles join our song. Tracker, Tracker, Boulder, Stoker, Stoker, Tidal, then Mystery, Mystery, Tidal, Strike and Sharp. Mystery, Mystery, Sharp, 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 Sharp. And that's just a fish. Stoker, Stoker, Tracker, Boulder, Tracker, Mystery. Shit. Stoker, Sharp, Sharp, Sharp. Richard, 3 more Stokers, Mystery. Boulder, Boulder, Mystery. Sharpie, Sharpie, Tidal, then. Tracker, Strike, Mystery. Tidal, Sharp and Track. Strike, Sharp, Stoker, Tidal, Boulder. Strike, 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 Mystery. Tracker, Sharp, Tracker, Stoker, and Mystery completes the list. Only joking, there's still some more. Oh! Tracker, Tracker, Boulder, Stoker, Strike. Oi! Stoker, Mystery, Stoker, 3 mysteries, come along. Stoker, Stoker, Sharpie, Sharp, Stoker, then Mystery, Mystery. What are all of these? Mystery, 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 I know I probably missed some, but holy Thor, there's a lot. The rest are completely understandable because they are skulls. Sharp, Stoker, Sharp, Tracker, Boulder, Strike, Sharp, Tidal, Stoker, Stoker, or artistic impressions of a dragon. Strike, Boulder, Strike. There. Done.